Hello again, friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru, right here, wherever you are, on this Monday afternoon. And you are our friends. I caught myself there. I am your host, the great Brian Last, enjoying a beautiful coffee right now. And of course, the star of the show, the man who'll be answering your questions, sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru, or via email to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. Yes, there are still people tweeting at me, how do I submit a question for the show? But here he is, the star, Mr. Jim Cornette.
Thank you for going around your elbow to get to your wrist on that one. Young, great Brian Last. Beautiful coffee. You describe coffee as beautiful?
Yeah, why not?
I will admit that I'm not a coffee drinker. And the smell of it repulses me. And the taste of it, the one time that I did taste it, repulsed me as well. But some people do find that they enjoy coffee. But you could describe it as hot. You could describe it as tasty. But beautiful, all coffee, even if it tastes like shit, looks alike.
I'm not looking at it.
You could put 2 cups of coffee right next to one another.
That's not true.
And one could be tasty and one could be shit, and they would still look the same. So 1 cup of coffee can't be beautiful. Beautiful implies a state of maximum attractiveness, doesn't it?
Well, first of all, there are different shades of coffee. If you put them next to each other, they would look different potentially, but how would you describe Sprite Zero?
Why, it's refreshing. It's effervescent. It's the nectar of the gods. But it's not beautiful.
It certainly
because
isn't.
It looks like liquid.
All right.
See, right there. Now, I thought you were supposed to put me in a good mood.
You know, I will say, you bring up sick animals. Those ASPCA commercials finally got me. I'm now doing $19 a month. It broke me down the other day. It was airing at least once every 2 commercial breaks, and I can't look at it. I had to look away, and finally I looked up, and there's just a dog shivering in the cold.
Oh, stop it and ask, hooty hoot, hooty hoot.
And
no,
I
seriously... and by the way, I missed the Untouchables marathon on Heroes and Icons on Sundays to do this fine program with you, or missed part of it at least. But I swear on that and on MSNBC all day long, I have the last button ready to hit, because as soon as that commercial comes on the air, I hit last and go to another channel for 3 minutes because I can't take it. And
it finally got me. Finally, it broke me down. I said,
no.
Fuck. You know, Chris Jericho has all this money he can spend on Donald Trump. I'm like, man, I spend money on so much nonsense. I'm going to give it to these poor dogs, right?
Well, but when $19 a month, you're only $19 seriously.
That's what they said in the commercial, $19 a month.
The reason why I switched the fucking commercial over is because I'm already into them for much more than $19 a month.
Oh, really? Oh,
for fuck's sake. Well, not actually all animal rights, not that specific, but just any animals, humane societies in Kentucky here and various things and such.
They know how to pick the right song, too, to just pull at your heartstrings. Just every time. I'm like, oh, my God.
All right, now, wait a minute. You were supposed to get me in a good mood. You got me from being mad. Now you're going to get me depressed. I'm going to walk off the fucking set here.
I was trying to get you from angry to sympathy, and now I'll get you into the hijinks of the professional wrestling business.
Give me some hijinks.
Well, this first question, Jim, sent on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru, a very popular topic this week. This was sent by DRL. How does Jim feel about Adam Pearce, who has been a face authority figure, facing Roman Reigns for the title at Royal Rumble?
To be honest, when I heard about what was going on, because, you know, I've worked with Adam in Ring of Honor and I've managed him and I think a lot of him. So when I heard about that, I said, I gotta see this. And I had you send me their YouTube clips, because I didn't see the show because it was on SmackDown and we don't do that. But I've got to admit, and I'll say that there were 3 clips, the way that they summarized the incident. The first clip was the in-ring promo where Roman Reigns was really intimidating Adam, and the second one was backstage where Sonya Deville's in there somehow as Adam's second in command, and I see problems in that relationship. She's going to try to take the place over. And then the third one was the end of the gauntlet match where he wins the opportunity. So this was their clips and their editing. And the first clip made me actually both of the first two made me want to actually have seen more of SmackDown, because now I know why so many people for so long were trying to get Vince to switch Roman Reigns heel. He's fucking fabulous. His fucking facials, the way he delivers the line, the fucking promos. Of course, he's got, Heyman there, which is like having, what was the guy who used to host the fucking actor inside the actor's studio? James Lipton is in his ear, right? Yeah, but
the only problem I will say, let me just jump in real quick. I agree. I watched that clip. Roman Reigns was fantastic, but the fake crowd noise.
Yeah, that was. I wasn't holding it against the performers because they have no control over that. But the fake crowd noise just shits all over it. It really does. Because this sounded credible and like something that could be a conversation that could be taking place. Like, because Heyman's involved. I can't imagine what this was like before Heyman got a hold of it. Because we'll talk about the logic of this whole thing in a second, but we're just going on performance now. But I can't imagine what this was like before Heyman got a hold of it in terms of logic and the match finish layout. Because if this is the best he could do out of it there, then it must have been really fucked up to begin with. However, back to performance. Reigns means what he says. He delivers it well. He looks like $1 million. He's got the facials. He sounds like he's got a voice, a grown adult voice. Adam did a great job. Adam was an unheralded promo in his day, but he didn't have to do much here. It's not like they're jousting back and forth. He's being the fucking guy that's backing down because this beast is in his face. And with the second clip, Heyman is so smarmy. Paul, he drips and oozes sarcasm and slime, the way he phrases things and his voice. And you can tell he's through and through. He looks like a guy that would fuck you around. And even the line, I know you may think I'm lying to you. And Adam, yes, I do. The performances there were fantastic. And like I said, I see why people, especially, I'm thinking that probably the people that several years ago during the whole WrestleMania debacle with, Roman Reigns and the people turning on him, that the Vince's older, more established agents, advisors, whoever they may be, were probably had to be saying, Vince, turn this guy heel and let him go. I would think they had to have been, and he didn't want to, because we heard rumblings of everybody saying how to switch him heel. But wow, what we could have had. I would watch if Roman Reigns had been, I may have to start watching or maybe just taping SmackDown and just watching Reigns and Heyman. I don't know. But anyway, that was a breath of fresh air. Having said that, am I to understand by the clip of the finish of the match that this gauntlet match went an hour, ended up with Shinsuke Nakamura in there, and then Roman Reigns and Jey Uso just right in front of the referee just beat up Shinsuke, then throw Adam Pearce in and knock him out and put him on top of Shinsuke Nakamura, and the referee counts 3, and that's how Adam Pearce won the match. Is that an apt description of what went on?
That's certainly an apt description of the end of the match. I wasn't sure exactly how long it went on because I didn't watch anything.
Well, the announcers in the clip were said after an hour.
I tuned them out. I can't pay attention to their commentators.
Okay, and I am assuming that this finish was done this way because it was a no disqualification match. Is that correct?
Again, I don't know.
Well, that's probably their cover story because that's what they do every other. Well, somebody should do something, but it's no disqualification when the guy's driven his pickup truck in from the parking lot and runs the guy over and then backs up and runs over him again. But it's no DQ. Instead of no disqualification, they ought to say this match will be contested under lazy fucking booking rules. Because that didn't get any heat. That got go away heat. That got disgusting heat. That got the kind of heat that used to kill territories. If anybody took this at all seriously anymore, it would. It's just the reason why that nobody's watching the WWE anymore compared to what they used to be, and the viewers are dropping because it just turns people off. Because it's stupid. Because it's disgusting heat, as they used to call it in the business. It's not good heat on heels The referee's standing there. The visual doesn't make sense. There was a rule of thumb that I heard when I first got into business. Even in a no DQ match, the heel should cheat behind the referee's back as much as possible. Because even though, yes, it is no disqualification, the visual, the subliminal message that you send to people in the arena or the TV viewer, it's skewed. If you're cheating in front of the referee, if the heel's not getting heat, as much heat, and the babyface is not getting as much sympathy, if it's happening in front of an authority figure, it's human nature. He went behind his back, or the referee didn't see it, whatever the case. Secondly, to have it at this level where they're just beating the guy up on and then beat the other guy up and then put him on top, where was anybody else in the company? Adam Pearce is a representative of the show. How did Heyman even, I know and they did do an edit, but he tried to explain it, that Roman Reigns has his pull or whatever, but no, you can't force an executive of the company, the authority figure on the television, into a wrestling match, whether he used to be a wrestler or not, that he doesn't want to be involved in, and the company is going to sanction something involving one of their employees, office employees, at the behest of the top heel. If the heel is telling the company what to do, then that's fucking backwards ass logic. And they've gone down the rabbit hole so far here of you can just say shit in wrestling and make it so, that they've gotten so fucking, well, I can't say they're lazy bookers because they don't have bookers. Well, Michael Hayes is still around there, and Road Dogg might remember what that was like, but the rest of them have never been involved in the wrestling business. They're a bunch of fucking college-educated comedy writers. So they don't give a shit. But I don't know. I haven't been watching the program, but I would assume that they have probably not made a large deal out of Adam Pearce's wrestling background. I would think that would be a correct statement. They may have mentioned that he's a wrestler, but I don't think they've done any video packages, right? Shown any footage, any still pictures of him with the NWA World Heavyweight Championship belt, anything like that.
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, in fact, when Paul Heyman started saying, Scrap Daddy, Adam Pearce, I was like, oh, that's the first time I've ever heard in these clips we've seen any reference to him as a wrestler.
Yeah, because they were trying to give the people a fucking history lesson in a minute and a half backstage pre-tape.
And he never wrestled there. Which is the reason why, if you were going to go in this direction, you could actually have done this where it stood a chance of, I can't say drawing money anymore because it's the networks. They don't sell tickets, whatever the fuck, but draw interest if you'd have just planned ahead and made it in some way not insult people's intelligence that it could happen, because all these people involved in performing this stuff did a great job. So imagine if you gave them something that they could actually believe and that everybody else could too. Roman Reigns is a top heel, and I assume this is not the first time that maybe it is, because he's just come over from Raw, right? And Paul was introducing himself to Adam Pearce like that they weren't old buddies. But the point being, have the top heel and his smarmy manager grate on the nerves of, be a pebble in the shoe of, cause constant consternation to, and fuck up the plans of the authority figure. What is his exact title? I'm not sure.
You know what everything that happened in Mid-South Wrestling in 1982, but you don't remember the guy's title from whatever his fucking title is.
That stuff was neatly explained on TV.
Well, exactly. Yeah. But Adam Pearce, the authority figure, you fuck with him because you're the top heel and the top manager. But at the same time, don't make him the fucking slink-off guy. Have him have some balls. Adam can cut a promo, and Adam is a former wrestler. And when it comes time for the confrontation that you saw, because they just did a fucking 8-week build to a program from Seg 1 to Seg 6 to Seg 11. But if you'd done it right and you did it over 8 weeks, they've been a problem. They've done some other things. He's tried to warn them. They skirt around the fucking issues. They're getting a little bit more pissed at Adam himself. And finally, when you have the big confrontation, that's the point where he should physically back down and say, I'm not trying to cause trouble, and I do respect you, but I've got a job to do also. they had him back down and beg off, and then didn't have him get some spine back and say, but I've got a job to do, and I'm an executive with this company, which is what any real executive with the company would have said. So anyway, you have him nettled for several weeks or whatever. Then you have the confrontation where Reigns tells him off and where he backs up, but I've got a job to do. And then so then you have the heel say, well, we'll just see how well you do your job. And then you create, instead of just having a company executive signed in a match or just throw it out there, you create some situation, whether it's an angle or a match or whatever. There's two ways to get a baby face like Adam. He doesn't have to be the superhero, but he's got to be a baby face in terms of an honorable person who's, for once with this evil empire, he's got the right idea in mind. You either embarrass him as a man or you hold someone else's well-being over him to get him to agree to do what you want him to do. It doesn't just willy-nilly magically appear. Or the heel can't call the shots over an executive of the company, but if he's been insulted as a man, such as something like what they did with Jey Uso, where as a man, he was not going to back down to Roman Reigns until finally just beat the piss out of him and he's okay, enough. But at first he was firing up. Or you hold someone else's fucking well-being. You create a situation of chaos where some poor schlub is going to have his career ended and the other, members of the Samoan tribe are playing King of the Hill, and Heyman saying, Pearce, if you don't agree to face this man one-on-one, then his death is going to be on your head or whatever, something. You don't have a guy reluctant, involved, win a match he's not even involved in because he refused to be in it, so you knock him out and put him on top of the other guy you knocked out. That's just lazy fucking booking. And now they can get something because Adam can go and he can work. So they can get something out of Roman Reigns, not for 45 minutes like they did with Jey Uso that time, but out of Roman Reigns having a physical confrontation, a fight with Adam Pearce, because whatever they do, Adam will be good enough to carry his part of it. But they could have had so much more interest and it been so much more like for an adult audience. I'm not talking about X-rated. I'm talking about anybody over 12 that has critical thinking. It could have been more plausible that all this would take place. But it just from seg 1 to seg 6 to seg 11. Yeah, and boom. Referee counted. Okay, now you're challenging for the title. Blah.
Adam took that super kick great.
Oh, yeah, what a drop. And with the fucking right arm stiff up in the... He looked like a fucking deer that got hit and knocked stiff in the highway. Performance was wonderful on everybody's part if they only had people that were booking instead of writing. And also it's not an atmosphere where anybody's going to... This is good compared to what they've been doing because it's sports entertainment all the way now. Now that they've gotten those pesky fans in the arena out of the way where they can manipulate all the responses. But Roman Reigns, I see now, he could have been a fucking star heel in any territory. You'd have believed, and his work is fucking great. He looks like $1 million. Those promos, the way he speaks. Fuck, he could have been a superstar in any territory. Now I see why everybody's been so high on him. Except for the fans who want to see some 190-pound flying monkeys. Because that's what we're down to at this point. Go ahead.
We don't know where they're going with this. We don't know if by the time we get to Royal Rumble, it'll be Roman Reigns versus Kevin Owens, if they'll do something to get Adam out of the match. But are we watching the Royal Rumble this year?
I tell you what, if he does wrestle Adam, we'll watch it. If he wrestles Owens, I don't know. We may have to flip a coin.
All right.
Why would you do all this and then not have the match? They don't have to sell tickets anyway.
It's WWE. They do stupid shit every day.
I think at this point, and they've had one, they haven't had the other. I think Roman Reigns against Adam Pearce would sell more tickets, quote unquote, than Roman Reigns and Kevin Owens.
But what do you do? If it is Adam Pearce, who hasn't been in the ring for years now at this point, he's never been in the ring in WWE, so the fans have no history with him. Do you have him go in there and have a competitive match against Roman Reigns?
No. You decide who Roman Reigns' WrestleMania opponent is going to be if they haven't done that yet. Now would probably be a real good time. And then Roman Reigns defends the title against Adam Pearce. Roman Reigns starts out playing with him, trying to demoralize him, much as they did with Jey Uso. You give Adam a nice flurry where he acquits himself like a man, and then he gets shut down, and then he gets, as Ernie Ladd used to say, waltz him across Texas. Make him sell like he's going to the electric chair. Give him his comeback to the dressing room. Beat him, and then continue pummeling the dead horse until the WrestleMania opponent shows up and have a big fucking pull apart. A big fucking angle, and let the WrestleMania opponent get some kind of something on Roman Reigns and or Heyman. Has he taken a bump in the last 10 years? Has he been off his feet?
Has he taken a bump in the last 20 years?
I don't know, but, anyway, you have your WrestleMania opponent get something on Roman Reigns going off the air, or Heyman, or both at the Rumble, and then you got 8 weeks from there to build it on television. But no, it's not competitive, but there can be a story to it, and you can help further the thing along. I assume that's not the match they're expecting to sell the Royal Rumble to begin with. So be creative.
I will say I'm probably going to have to get you some more clips because several people have sent them in, and I haven't sent them to you, but they're really good. There's a show called Talking Smack, which is kind of like a panel discussion about SmackDown, the world of SmackDown. But Heyman's on there with various wrestlers, and he's I mean, it's no surprise to you. He's great.
Oh, yeah.
He's fantastic. He's really good. And it's just
I'll watch those.
It's such a departure from Paulie Dangerously. Just always screaming and yelling. He's so calculated now. It's a real amazing evolution.
He did settle down a bit, because that was my thing with Paul, and I know everybody's, well, Cornette, you were always up in the air. I was loud and a big mouth, but sometimes I was talking fast, I was happy. Sometimes I was talking fast, I was scared. Sometimes I was talking fast, I was angry. Paul was always in a homicidal rage when he was Paulie. And he was gripping the phone, and his veins were popping out, and I was like, fuck, calm the fuck down. Be loud, but do other emotions. But he's Alfred fucking Hitchcock as a slimy lawyer. It's fucking great. But verbally, he's always been brilliant one way or the other.
Yeah, but this actually may be his best stuff. This era of Paul. Jim, let's get another question here. This was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru.
I just thought one thing. When you said the era of Paul, I just remembered the Seinfeld episode about the summer of George.
Well, this question, as I said, sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Brandon. I'd just like to hear Jim Cornette's opinion of the Sports Illustrated Top 10 Wrestlers of 2020. I'm sure I'll disagree, as I do like the list, but I'd be happy to be educated why I and Sports Illustrated are wrong.
Well, sure, and also, it's gotten out of hand. We've brought this up. It used to be Sports Illustrated, the magazine. When you were on the cover, it was a big deal. It was on the newsstands around America. They had quality writers on staff. They covered the world of sports, the best photographers. They had an editorial board that would give awards of things. Now Sports Illustrated is a website that apparently anybody can write for, like all the rest of them. And it's not the way this question is phrased. It's like people would assume Sports Illustrated, the magazine, the publication, the entity, had an editorial board that did some kind of research and grading and gave this ranking out. No, it's some schmo that writes for their website. And I don't even know who the schmo is. And I don't care. And they got a bunch of schmoes. I'm not pointing out one schmo in particular. But no, now they've just got people that, and they've picked up on that a lot of people like wrestling. So as before, the magazine, because it was more mainstream, avoided pro wrestling, except in the case of Danny Hodge and Hulk Hogan. Well, Hodge wasn't even a pro yet when he was on it. Now they've got a bunch of young people that write for websites, and young people that write for websites like wrestling, and therefore whoever wrote this article came up with a list. But it's just so ridiculous. It's like if suddenly everybody that was, fucking trying to be a writer on the side from their part-time job, and wrote for Time Magazine's website, suddenly was giving out the Time Man of the Year award. There's been a disconnect where now, just because Sports Illustrated website says it, it's not. I know I'm going to great lengths to tear this down before I even know what the list is, but you see where I'm going with this. This is a bunch of fucking knuckleheads writing on websites, and it's gotten to where Sports Illustrated is in the same fucking boat.
I grew up in a house where my dad had Sports Illustrated and the Sporting News, and even the National, when that existed, delivered to the house.
Yeah.
So I've been reading these publications since I was a kid. And I think taking wrestling out of it, there has been a very sad decline for what was once the very powerful and influential Sports Illustrated. It isn't that anymore. When it comes to wrestling, everything I've seen on Sports Illustrated is either a puff piece with no real substance. It's almost like a PR arm for various wrestling companies, or that ridiculous piece we saw blaming Bret Hart from Montreal.
Yeah, well, that's the one I was thinking of because that was only a few weeks ago. And we're like, how did this? They should be ashamed that just the quality of the writing, not even the opinion, but the quality of the piece that it would carry the name Sports Illustrated. But now that we've completely shit all over their faces, what's the list?
Number 10, the top 10 wrestlers of 2020 from AEW, Eddie Kingston. Number 9.
What? You didn't even give me a chance.
You didn't jump in. I didn't know you were gonna.
I was gonna give one of those. I like Eddie Kingston, and we've said good things about him. But is there only 9 wrestlers in the business that were better than he was this year?
Well, we'll find out shortly. Number 9 from WWE, Roman Reigns.
And they're telling me there's 8 wrestlers in the business that had a better year than Roman Reigns.
Number 8 from New Japan Pro Wrestling, Koda Ibushi.
And he's another one of the doll boys, isn't he?
He's very talented in the ring.
He's another one of the fucking little children that wrestles the blow-up dolls over there.
He is one of the doll boys, yes, but he is very talented.
So, well, fuck you.
Me?
No, to Koda Ibushi.
Okay, that's more like it.
Fuck you, Kotex Ibushi.
Number 7, the top 10 wrestlers of 2020 from WWE/NXT, Io Shirai.
Oh, God. Wait a minute. Io Shirai somehow, now, whether did they have a better 2020 or are they a better wrestler? Or were they used in a better fashion? Somebody's trying to make the fucking case that Io Shirai is 2 spots above Roman Reigns.
There are no qualifiers here, so we don't know exactly what went into
any of those.
The tabulations. Number 6, from WWE, Bayley.
Okay.
Number 5.
Why? I mean, I'm not even knocking Bayley here, but who is Quantum? Did he just write down 10 people's names on paper, eat the paper, and then puke?
I don't know. Well, number 5 on this list, the top 10 wrestlers of 2020 from AEW, it's another one of those doll boys, Kenny Omega.
Okay, so the list of the best wrestlers of 2020 in this one particular guy's opinion that was lucky enough to get published on the Sports Illustrated website thinks that, I don't even know where to go here, that Kenny Olivier is 3 spots above Roman Reigns, or that
No, that's wrong. He's 4 spots above.
4 spots above Roman Reigns, or is it even a bigger insult that Kenny Olivier is only 1 spot above Bayley? I don't know which way to fucking look at this thing.
Number 4, from New Japan Pro Wrestling, Tetsuya Naito.
I couldn't pick him out of a lineup, so I cannot comment on the validity of his spot in the quantification here.
He's very good. I will say he's very good.
Well, good.
Number 3, from WWE, Drew McIntyre.
Well, honestly, we're actually getting somewhat of the real world stuck in here. Drew McIntyre probably had one of the better years of anybody in the business. They pushed him to the top, even though they bungled it and they took the belt off of him. They put it back on him, but they pushed him. He looks great. He talks great. He's had good matches. He's just, in a promotion that has the stench of boring and stale all over it. But it's a whole lot more credible than fucking number 5 through 9 or whatever the fuck that was.
Number 2 from AEW, Jon Moxley.
Okay. Moxley is a spot above Drew McIntyre. Drew McIntyre excels at the highest level, is awarded the WWE Championship, is pushed in the main event at WrestleMania and SummerSlam, all the big shows. Jon Moxley leaves the WWE because they won't let him be a garbage outlaw indie wrestler and use thumbtacks. So he pops up at the Vanity Project over on the other network, where every week he has to dress in his car in the parking lot, walk 5 miles to the ring, and he looks like a balding plumber. So I think if I was them, I'd at least reverse number 2 and number 3.
Well, Jim, we saw a lot of wrestling in 2020, various programs, various promotions. Before I reveal the number 1 pick for the top 10 wrestlers of 2020 according to Sports Illustrated, any guesses who you think could be number 1 based on not just who we saw and who was good during the year, but based on this list?
Rhea Ripley.
That's your pick?
That's my pick.
Number 1 from WWE, Sasha Banks.
Oh, fucking hell.
At least the 10 people on this list somewhat were pushed in the year. Rhea Ripley, they have completely misused in 2020.
I need to get my oxygen there. Hold on. What is there like a paragraph underneath these choices where this dimwit attempts to justify these completely random selections and random placings with any legitimacy as to why they would be on a top 10 list of 2020?
There isn't with this post, but I'm really quickly looking to see if there is some sort of description or something written up to explain the decision-making process behind this list.
Was this voted on by the home office in Lincoln, Nebraska? Was this information held in a mayonnaise jar on Funkin' Wagnall's porch since noon today?
Here's the article from Sports Illustrated, published January 7th by Justin Barrasso.
Well, I said that schmo. I've talked to Justin before. I'm sorry, Justin, you're such a schmo, but God, you got rotten taste.
Even without crowds for the majority of the year, 2020 produced some excellent wrestling. These 10 men and women stood above the rest.
How? How did Sasha Banks stand above everybody else in the entire wrestling profession in the year 2020?
Despite a global pandemic, the world of professional wrestling continued to operate in 2020. Even when it was not necessary, WWE and AEW pressed on.
Even when it was not necessary? Why does that tickle me? It's not necessary you do this, but go ahead. God damn it.
Even when it was not necessary.
Like when Ole came in Atlanta that time in '83 and closed the territory, he didn't say you're fired. He just said, don't do this anymore. And they said, what? He said, any of it.
Even when it was not necessary, WWE and AEW pressed on, seeking to find a way to present the art form in as realistic and believable a manner as possible. Jesus Christ. What is he writing?
Oh my God, I just think I've just blown my fucking front tooth out. What was that, as realistic and...
Seeking to find a way to present the art form in as realistic and believable a manner as possible.
Oh God.
We saw swamp fights.
The last time that somebody sought to do something like that, it was Columbus looking for a shortcut and he discovered the wrong country. He was way off.
That proved difficult to do without a live in-person audience, a necessary ingredient in creating wrestling magic. Looking back, At the shows early in the spring, particularly WrestleMania, there is a vast difference in presentation. WWE now uses its elaborate Thunderdome set.
Yeah.
While AEW, which had taped ahead during the spring, including a no-holds-barred match pitting Jake Hager against Jon Moxley, also found new ways to infuse life into its weekly broadcasts. New Japan Pro Wrestling halted live shows for 3.5 months until returning in June, but now again faces the possibility of empty arena shows, with cases on the rise in Japan. Unlike past...
How does this relate to the top 10 wrestlers?
Unlike past years, this list features all the top performers and is not broken down by gender. A great wrestler is a great wrestler. So moving forward, there will only be one top 10 from this author.
Yeah, that's why all the top stars of the WNBA love to get on the court with LeBron James. Because basketball players are basketball players.
While pro wrestling remains a different entity in its current crowdless form, there were still a number of performers who stood out throughout the past 12 months. While compiling a list of the year's top 10, certain guidelines applied.
Oh, we got guidelines.
A performer did not need to wrestle.
Why couldn't you cut the other bunch of shit and just get to this?
A performer did not need to wrestle the entire 12 months of 2020 to make the top 10, but it certainly helped. And though it is important to
a wrestler didn't need to show up for work every day, but it certainly helped. And hey, for all the wrestlers who didn't trip and fall on their heads and knock their own selves out, that certainly helped too.
And though it is important to highlight the independent circuit on this list, one spot is normally exclusively reserved for an indie talent, the pandemic has simply wreaked havoc on independent wrestling.
Wait a minute, how was that written? Wrecked? How was wrecked spelled?
Oh, wreaked, I guess. WREAKED.
Okay, I was going to say if they did the wrecked, because a lot of those times people will do that.
Yeah, that's my
You don't
my
wreck
mistake.
Havoc, you wreak havoc. Oh, so it's you.
It's me, not Sports Illustrated.
I always thought you were a cunning linguist.
Didn't Joel Gertner just say that last week on Cameo here on the show? But anyway, fortunately, there were projects like The Masked Wrestler.
Hey, it's not like he invented it either, by the way, for heaven's sake. That's as old as I am. And you know what the difference is between a circus big tent and a sorority house is, don't you?
I don't.
A circus is full of cunning stunts.
Okay, I know where you're going. Let me just stop you right here before I
didn't say anything. I just answered your question I answered the question that I asked that you didn't know the answer to.
Anyway, no spot on this year's list saved solely for indie talent. Factors involved in selecting the top 10 included a combination of the wrestlers' work in the ring, the attention their work garnered, and their overall impact on the business over the past year.
So Sasha Banks got more attention, did better work, and had a bigger impact on the business than Drew McIntyre. Or Roman Reigns.
An integral part of a wrestler's brilliance is the ability to make viewers believe in the opponent standing across the ring. So a wrestler's skill at consistently elevating the opponent was also emphasized.
Well, hell, in that case, nobody should be on that list in the wrestling business because nobody can figure out how to do that these days.
Relevance to the wrestling world. For example, if Eddie Kingston is ranked ahead of Tomohiro Ishii, it means he had a better year, not necessarily that he is the better wrestler, also factored into the decision.
Because, Tomohiro Ishii,
he's great. He's
had
great.
a rotten year. Because he hired the wrong attorney to defend him on that charge of sniffing bicycle seats over at the public library.
He is a fantastic wrestler, let me just say. Stage and magnitude were also important, as was match quality. Here are my top 10 singles wrestlers.
Oh, there we go. There we go. 6,000 words to here are my top 10. Here is who I think are the top 10 wrestlers in the business, and nobody else would have made this list up but me.
He has a list of notable omissions, and then he has a description for each of the top 10. Is there anyone specifically you'd like to hear?
Well, I'd like to hear what he has to say about just start at who was number 10?
Number 10 was Eddie Kingston.
Well, let's go to number 9. That was Roman Reigns. What's he say about Roman Reigns?
His top 3 matches of 2020, Hell in a Cell versus Jey Uso, Survivor Series versus Drew McIntyre, and TLC versus Kevin Owens. After missing 6 months of in-ring action, Roman Reigns stands as the most debatable name on this list. There were many other deserving performers for this spot. Shingo Takagi was outstanding in New Japan Pro Wrestling, elevating himself on the card and delivering phenomenal matches. Cody Rhodes also had a fantastic year, shining a spotlight on several younger emerging performers like Jungle Boy, Sonny Kiss, Ricky Starks, and Warhorse.
Hey, but there you go. Right there should disqualify poor old Cody because he shined a light on Sonny Kiss and Whorehouse.
But even after missing half of the year, opting to spend time with his family after his wife gave birth to twins, Reigns returned at the end of August and has delivered the best work of his career. The program with Jey Uso has presented the former tag team specialist in an entirely new light, which was on display in their matches at Clash of Champions and Inside the Cage at Hell in a Cell. Even with a very short build, the champion versus champion match at Survivor Series, pitting Reigns against Drew McIntyre.
Okay, I've got the idea of the. I thought he was going to summarize some fucking pithy comment as a reason why he quantified these people in such a way. I didn't know he was. We asked him what time it was. He was going to tell us how to build the watch. What's he got to say for himself on old Kenny Olivier?
Number 5, Kenny Omega. His top 3 matches of 2020: Full Gear versus Hangman Page, on Dynamite against Jon Moxley, and at Triple Mania against the Laredo Kid. What are you laughing at there? Hold on.
That just came out of nowhere. You know, the big show on AEW, such and such, big show AEW, and Triple Mania with the Laredo Kid, who's, I think, about 146 pounds. I saw him on one of the early NWA broadcasts. And yeah, there you go.
Kenny Omega was one of the more challenging performers to place on this list.
You think?
Omega played a key role in 2 of the best matches of the year, which were a tag match with Hangman Page against the Young Bucks at Revolution in February.
Oh, boy.
And a singles main event at AAA's Triple Mania in December against the Laredo Kid.
The only way that Kenny Olivier played a part in 2 fabulous matches this past year was he was the one that set the ring up. But go ahead.
Despite spending a large portion of the year in a tag team with Page, there were still plenty of singles matches that stood out as elite. He wrestled Pentagon on Dynamite in October, not to mention the bout against Page at Full Gear in November. Another outstanding match was the 30-minute Iron Man match against Pac on Dynamite.
Oh, good Lord.
As well as standout bouts against Sammy Guevara, Trent, and even a match to put Alan Angels on the map.
What? Wait, what? Where is Alan Angels located at on the map? In between Truth or Consequences, New Mexico, and Pixley?
He's one of the masked members of the Dark Order, I believe.
But can you find Alan Angels on the wrestling map?
I don't even know what he looks like now.
If Alan Angels' picture was in public, it would be on the side of a milk carton. Go ahead.
After what appeared to be a slow start in AEW, Omega is now the defining factor on its programming, ending Jon Moxley's reign as AEW champion and making appearances on Impact Wrestling's television show. AEW's Pulse is directly connected to Omega, which is why he ended the year as the company's world champion.
Hey, if you were hooked up to a fucking machine, would you want Kenny Olivier to be the thing you were plugged into? Fuck, if I was them, I would start preparing my last will and testament. If Olivier is the ventilator that's keeping him breathing.
Would you like me to go on, or should we end this segment?
No, yeah. I wouldn't. No. I think we've plumbed that well pretty much right down to the fucking bone.
Well, you know, Jim, before you mentioned that Jon Moxley looks like a balding plumber.
He does.
He's lost a lot of hair in the last few years, and
he has.
We don't know where he's going to go the next several years, but there is something he could do right now.
I thought you were going to say we don't know where it's gone.
We don't know where that hair has gone,
I know what he could have done, though. I'm way ahead of you because you and I both know this. What he could have done if he'd have been smart enough was before all that happened, he should have gotten on Keeps. Because, folks, we've talked about it before. When you're a guy, you like to have hair. Some of these knuckleheads now shave their own head on purpose and want to be bald, but I don't know. But most people, most guys like to have hair. They like to wash it and get it cut and brush and comb it and things and such of that nature. And if you're my age, which is so old when I was in school we didn't have history, you expect to lose some. I got a spot up at the top. The forehead's bigger. I got a 5 head now. But I'm 60. It's the folks that are in their 20s and 30s, and they're starting to notice the first signs of hair loss. That freaks you out. And we know now that 2 out of 3 guys will experience some kind of male pattern baldness by the time they're 35. So the best way to prevent losing your hair is to do something about it while you still have your hair left. Hence the name Keeps. You want to keep your hair because this stuff ain't going to grow hair on a billiard ball. If it's gone, it's gone. But if you still got it and it's just starting to fucking say sayonara, get on Keeps and you can Keeps what you got. You don't have to go to the doctor and get a prescription, sit in a waiting room. You can visit a doctor online. You can get hair loss medication through Keeps delivered right to your door. They make it easy. They make deliveries every 3 months so you can say goodbye to the checkout lines and going out in public. And they offer generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products out there. And they're cheaper than some of the other folks around. So anyway, prevention is key. And these treatments take between 4 and 6 months to see results, so you got to act fast because the sooner that you start Keeps, the more hair you'll keeps. Find out why they got more 5-star reviews than any of the competitors. And if you're ready to take action and take back your hair, go to Keeps.com. That's Keeps. Keeps.com/JCE. You get your first month's treatment for free. Keeps.com/JCE. They're so confident in this stuff, they'll give it to you for free for 1 month, just to make sure you like it. Brian, I've noticed the last time I saw a picture of you, you were getting a bit thin, just a bit thin.
Well, fortunately, that isn't true because I have nothing to worry about.
Are you keepsing?
I am not, but if I needed to, I would.
Yeah, you know, the problem is you've got a big head of hair up there. I've always disliked you because of the thickness and the luxuriousness of your hair.
Out of all the reasons to dislike me, if that's the one, I'll take it.
Well, that was the first one that came to mind. I've compiled a list since then.
What is the second one that came to mind?
Well, we won't go into that in a public forum, but no, you know, and that's the thing, you know, but they didn't have this stuff back when I started losing my hair. Or maybe I would have a little, because it used to be thick when I was young, but as I started losing my hair, I went to my doctor one time and I said, Doc, I said, I'm getting thin. He said, well, it's in your genes. I said, that's not my problem. I got hair in my genes. I just on the top of my head. Anyway, what's next, Brian?
Imagine how much Paulie Dangerously would have been using Keeps in the early 90s if this was available.
He would have cornered the market, and he would have been selling it at the concession stand at the ECW events.
Did any personality or wrestler in WCW/NWA, whatever you want to say, 89, 90, use more makeup on camera than Paulie?
No, that was another thing. He was so thrilled when TBS bought the company and Herd started bringing in, he wasn't thrilled about this, but Herd started bringing in that hairstylist from St. Louis. I want to say J.C. Bringen. He was a victim of the Manson family, but the guy's first name was Jay and he was a hairstylist. And he would fly him into the pay-per-views and the Clash of Champions. And we're sitting there going, this motherfucker, $500 plane ticket and paying this guy to be here for a day and his hotel room to cut the fucking guy's hair? Get your fucking haircuts on your own goddamn time and show up to fucking wrestling. This is not a goddamn, a beauty parlor. And then they started doing makeup. And that's at Terry Runnels. Terry Boatwright was the first makeup technician, whatever the legal terminology for it is, makeup person.
Was that before the Turner buyout, though? She was around before that, wasn't she? No?
Oh. We didn't have makeup. Are you kidding? Jim Crockett? If he wasn't going to buy a fucking cooler and have a tub of goddamn bottled water in the fucking locker room, he wasn't going to provide makeup. And who needed makeup? The announcers, if they wanted to use makeup, they did their own. And none of the guys put makeup on. That was ridiculous. And then TBS, and they get the makeup and the whole thing, and all the announcers except me. And then they started until I just got, that's the 1990 when I was completely fed up. I said, you know what, fuck it. And I started refusing completely. I wouldn't let them put any of the makeup on. They said, well, you'll be shiny. That's because I sweat like a fucking whore in church on a regular basis because I'm working out there, right? I would let them pat me with the powder, and then that would just bothered me. But I refused the makeup, and I refused makeup in WWF. I look like what I look like. It never was a problem with me drawing money or getting over. But Paul loved it. He would go and seek them out and ask them to put the makeup on him. And I was running from them and refusing it. Because for some guys, because it was like, oh, we're in real TV. No. It's fucking wrestling. Anyway.
Speaking of which, our next question.
Paul E wears makeup. I said it was true. I cut the promos saying that Paul E was actually the former Ethel Greenbaum of Bronx, New York. Remember, I got the fucking Weekly World News that had the headline, sex change operation backfires or whatever, and I put his picture on it, taped a picture of him on over the picture of whatever the fuck they had. Said, see, the sources say that Paul E. Dangerously was the former Ethel Greenbaum of Bronx, New York.
He was like orange on a lot of those episodes.
Yes.
Yeah.
What has happened to the hair, though? That was where we were going with that. What has happened to his hair? How could that take place? It was all those years he wore it so long, it got heavy and it pulled out of his head.
I don't think that's how it works.
See, I've always worn mine short, so I kept mine a lot longer.
Let's get our next question.
How about that 100-pound differential now between us when it used to be? I had him by about, I would say, 12 or 15 pounds in 1988. And now he's got me by about 100.
Well, that's the one thing we always joke about, me and John Arezzi. When John got back into wrestling in 1989, George Napolitano took him to, I want to say, the New Haven show that the NWA did. And he was in the back. He hadn't seen anyone in years, and there were only a few guys there that he actually knew already. And he hadn't seen Paul Heyman since Paul was a photographer at ringside at the Garden, just as an obnoxious kid. Paul E. sees Arezzi and recognizes him and says, John Arezzi, boy, did you get fat. And I told John, next time you see him, that's exactly what you have to say to him. All right.
All righty then.
Let's get another question here on the show. This one sent in via email, thecornydrivethru@gmail.com, from Bill in Covington.
Bill! At least you pronounced Covington right this time.
Thank you. I think I said Covington last time, and you lectured me.
You said Covington, and the world laughed at you.
I read that when asked to give a grade for AEW in its first year, Cody gave it an A, with room to be an A+. He said, of course, as part of the company, he was not going to give it a bad grade. So to Jim, do you believe that Cody really thinks they were an A in their first year? And what would Jim grade AEW? And if you wanted them, I have some quotes here from Cody, from wherever this was pulled from.
Well, I will. We can flesh it out here in a second with the quotes. I will start with the main question was whether he really believes that or not. I would think not, but possibly, because you got a lot of these guys. I think Cody is more aware of who and what he is and can do and what other people can do and who they are than like the Bucks are. And Olivier's just, he's walking around with his head with the one-winged angels. I don't know what I can't give him credit for knowing anything about wrestling or what's good or what's bad because he's just a fucking putz that's meandering through life endlessly. But Cody's got a sharp head and a smart mind. He may be taken with the fact that they've been able to sell Tony Khan on this project and get all of their friends a job and get on national TV and get paid a bunch of money. So that to him, that may deserve the A with room for an A+. They may not care that it's a rotten fucking wrestling show, because all wrestling shows are rotten these days, and there's only real glimmers of what it used to be and what the fucking concept of the business is. So, maybe he's just convinced that in the field of shit wannabe wrestling that's out there, they're the best shit wannabe wrestling. I don't see how anybody that's been around the business any time at all can defend the booking, which is putrid. Makes no sense. It's not logical. The guys, in their matches do whatever the fuck they want to do, multiple times in a night. You see the same shit over and over because nobody has any new ideas, and they just can't accept that most of the guys on the roster, their job is just there to have good, solid matches so that the main event money drawing guys can do the spectacular shit. But to even get that far would require an experienced, knowledgeable booker that yanked a lot of people's asses in fucking line, and they don't have that, so it's fruitless anyway. So they've done a great job at starting their own company and getting all of their friends jobs, but what a good wrestling program, an alternative to the WWE, a program from scratch where with a billionaire's money on but national cable, where you have resources could have gone out and signed almost anybody not working for Vince McMahon in the wrestling business, and they've shown they're willing to work with another company, Impact Wrestling. So why wouldn't they have worked with MLW to get Jacob Fatu and Alexander Hammerstone? They work with a company that I would say Impact's talent is not anything to write home about, but they got Gallows and Anderson, as we said, at least look like grown men next to the, AEW roster. But, they went to basically the place where fucking people work for Impact because they have no other choice. And they're working with them instead of just signing guys and giving the company a little something and saying, hey, we didn't want to steal your talent, but we will compensate you. But we want this guy, and we're going to put him on national cable. It'll be better for everybody. Here's a fucking payoff for the company. Let's buy him out of his contract. We're going to sign him. We're going to put him on TV, get him over to a national audience on a mainstream television cable network. Instead, they're just letting Impact come in and getting free advertising. So no, they picked horrible talent. They've had a putrid show that makes no sense. So the only thing that they've done is they've accomplished talking a guy with money into starting a company and getting all their friends a job. So that's an A, but he can't legitimately believe that they've done a good job with the actual product, I guess. I don't know. You said there was quotes.
Yeah, and look, they've made money. So as far as being successful and making money and getting a long-term TV contract and having revenue sources, they get an A for that.
They made money because TNT paid them money to do a program.
But they've also had good live gates when they had fans there. Like, they were able to get fans to come for their indie super show. That can't be denied.
Well, that's the
creative is
that's
atrocious.
The good thing about the pandemic, because they have not been exposed for how many times can the group of fans that was flying around the country to draw those mega gates do that? How many times can they afford to do it?
Well, that's the thing. They were about to have their biggest gate ever in Newark, New Jersey, and I don't think that would have been a lot of fly-ins. I think that would have been a tri-state area audience.
Yeah, it's fucking New York.
But would it have happened a second time and a third time? Like, that's the thing.
They've had this year they would have had 52 television tapings they'd had to draw a house at. So we would have seen that repeat business wasn't going to work when everything they do looks exactly the same because they let their guys do whatever the fuck they want to do and they didn't pick their talent properly.
Yeah, again, so I think
the talent they picked has bad instincts.
From a business perspective, for a startup wrestling company, I would probably give them an A. For creative, I would not come anywhere close to giving them an A because the booking is atrocious. For the actual wrestling, if you're into those indie style matches, you probably love it. If you're not into them, it's a mixed bag at best. But here's some quotes from Cody.
I will go along with what you just said.
This apparently Cody was on the Chris Jericho show doing an interview because, as we know,
does Cody also believe the earth is flat?
I don't know, but I just saw something that the person that he started his cigar company with was one of the people fucking marching on Washington or whatever.
Well, now we come to find out he's no longer with the cigar company. People also tweeted he left that about 3 months ago. But he's one of these fucking right-wing Trump fucks, so fuck him anyway. He's a fucking traitor to his country and supports people who fucking subvert the Constitution and invite insurrection, so he can go piss up a fucking road.
You know, there is a story there. We're not going to do it now, just about the idea that the whole we're getting rid of all the carnies in wrestling and we're all inclusive and this and that. They're all MAGA idiots. They're all the exact opposite of what they're pretending to be because they're the carnies. They're the modern carnies. But anyway, a couple quotes from Cody. Somebody asked me, grade it. And of course, as part of the company, I'm not going to give it a bad grade, but I said A. And there's room for an A+. We know where we need to grow. AEW, if this had been its last year, thank gosh it wasn't, it's still been the greatest year of my life. I learned a lot of lessons, learned some hard lessons about the burdens of management. If you weren't popular before, you're definitely not going to be popular as you enter that space. I still think it's surreal. The numbers, that's why I love the data. And you're great about the data, the demo god. So I was kissing Jericho's ass. I love it when Chris Harrington shows me...
Chris Jericho's a mathematical genius.
I love it when Chris Harrington shows me the spreadsheet and talks about our international deals. We're having these calls. I was on the phone with Microsoft the other day. What am I doing? But I know what I want. I know what we're talking about, That blows me away. I told Tony Khan, do not give me this job unless you really want me to do the job, which would probably include pissing you off from time to time, which he's never been pissed at me, at least his version. Maybe he has. That's been the most exciting thing. The brain trust here amongst the talent, the EVPs, the management, the committee that exists that we don't talk about, the committee of thought, which is the Bucks and Kenny, you, being Chris Jericho, and Tony, is more than ever has in his mind. I'm not exactly sure what the hell this is trying to say.
Okay, this sounds like when the closed captioning on the hotel TV couldn't decipher Dusty Rhodes' color commentary.
Yeah. But I guess
he's coming out and saying, yeah, you, Jericho, me, and the Bucks and Tony and Olivier think of this horse shit.
That's the brain trust there.
So he's kind of burying himself right there by including, because his shit ain't that bad, but everybody else's sucks swamp water.
Well, here's an interesting quote here from Cody about how AEW can improve. To me, one of our biggest pros is also our biggest con. No pun intended. He tries so hard to sound smart. We have such freedom. Such freedom sometimes means there are things too similar on the same show. Well, this guy's asking me to join Team FTW. Well, this group, they're asking if he'll join in this. So that's one of the areas where the freedom is fun and pro. They're not worried about the traditional rules. It's punk rock. But also, you have to be disciplined so that it doesn't desensitize the show. By the way, Cody, don't talk about punk rock. You don't know anything about punk rock. This isn't punk rock.
It's a bunch of punks, but ain't no rock. But so you know what? You can solve the problem that he just talked about in one television show. If the guys are doing the same kind of shit because they have too much freedom and they have the freedom to do their shit and all the shit is alike, shut that shit down, idiot. One guy that knows what he's talking about, that can do this fucking job and manipulate this fucking thing, should be formatting that show and telling everybody what to do. And he should have an assistant or two that are good at giving out his instructions and solving detail problems. And if anybody does shit that somebody else is doing in an important part of the show, whether it be moves or in promo verbiage or whatever the fuck, then those persons need to be called in the office and say, hey, pay attention to the rest of the program. Don't do shit that we're doing in other segments. And if you have any questions, ask me whether you're allowed to do something or not. And I will tell you. And it's over in a week. That's it. That's easy. Next problem. Give me a hard problem. Nobody's telling these fucking guys what to do and what not to do, and that is the obvious problem because it's a goddamn shit show of chaos. Tumbleweeds blowing across the fucking screen in every direction. When you go to one of those puppet shows, Brian?
For the record, I don't go to puppet shows. Just
well, when you go to one of those puppet shows, do you go to see the puppets just lay there and say, well, those are some cute little puppets just laying there? Or do you go to see the puppets do something? The booker is the one that has the strings. And if you got good-looking puppets and you fucking fiddle their strings good, then you get a nice show. But if you've got a fucking idiot holding the strings and you get a bunch of people smashing into each other, which is what they've got now, and without also anybody pulling the strings, you got a bunch of fucking puppets just laying there. You don't like puppet shows?
I like the Muppets. I love the Muppets.
Those are sock puppets. Those are hand puppets. It doesn't take any art or any talent.
It takes more talent. It takes more talent to operate a Muppet correctly than to do a simple puppet show. That is factually incorrect.
I must admit I am but a simple country lawyer, and I've never manipulated a Muppet correctly or incorrectly. However, I would think that it takes less dexterity to shove your hand up the ass or anal orifice or rear entrance of a hand puppet than it does to manipulate the strings on those old-fashioned marionette type puppets.
No, because you see, the secret of the Muppets is the way they use their hand. You're supposed to use your thumb as the bottom jaw, as opposed to just moving your hand up and down. You're supposed to, when you do it correctly, make it look like the Muppet is actually speaking. If you watch Jim Henson work Kermit the Frog, it's pretty incredible what he's able to do. Frank Oz was maybe the greatest puppeteer of all time. If you watch what he's doing, that's the art. That's incredible. And that's what wrestling needs. AEW needs a Jim Henson who has creative people working for him and can say, nope, this is what we're going to do. Here's my reasoning for it. As opposed to just a bunch of master puppeteers coming up with their own decisions about what they're going to do and no one with a backbone to say, no, we're not doing this.
I must admit that I've had a lot of success with just moving my hand up and down.
Have you now?
I have manipulated that way for many years. And I'll tell you what, you don't need a sock. You don't need any strings. The hand will do it.
I'm not sure exactly where we're going, but sometimes the hand can get caught in a net of cobwebs, but luckily there's Manscaped.
Well, that's right, because I'll tell you, cobwebs. Now, see what you could have said, but the last thing that you want to do, ladies and gentlemen, is stick your hand in the bushes unless you know what's inside. And now, with the Manscaped products, you can clear away. You can clear away the weeds and the cobwebs, for heaven's sake. That's when we get Swiffer as a sponsor, we'll talk about it. Anyway, you can clear away the weeds and the crops and the all kinds of things around your oak tree and your shrubs so that you can see them better. But folks, Manscaped, as you know, is one of our favorite sponsors. It's the Manscaped products have kept us slick shaved, smelling good, soft for this entire pandemic year. Even if you haven't had people's nose in the vicinity of your crotch in a while because of quarantine, you still want to keep it fresh and maintained. Well, now Manscaped has another product. Besides being the best in the world in men's below-the-belt grooming, Manscaped has just released their new cologne, designed to help you feel good and smell good all over and at all times. And I got some. They sent me some. And whoo, this stuff is great. It comes in a cool box and a cool bottle. It looks nice and sleek and masculine. and just one squirt right behind either one of my ears, and I'm in a good mood. It actually put me in a good mood the first time I wore it, Brian, because it's not like, the Axe spray or shit you get at the drugstore where you have to spray a half a gallon on and it'll stick around for 10 minutes or so. A little dab of this on either side of the nape of the neck, and I enjoyed my own presence. It really does smell good. It's hypoallergenic, dye-free, paraben-free, cruelty-free. I don't know how cruelty would figure into this, because unless they're bullwhipping the people that are fucking mailing these things out. And it's 100% vegan too, but I don't encourage drinking it. It's got a beautifully designed glass bottle that makes a statement and a manly scent, attractive to set the mood. As a matter of fact, can I just read you some of the press clippings on this? One reviewer found this cologne to be light, approachable, and gentlemanly in all the right ways. Think of it as your wingman for the night to keep you fresh and ready for anything. Another reviewer said, calming and inviting, this signature scent introduces a light citrus burst before settling into the anchoring notes of vetiver and a woody masculine finish. I don't know whether I want a woody masculine finish on my face or neck, but I'll guarantee you this, I like the way this stuff smells, folks. So get it. Get it while you can. You're going to smell so good, your significant other will hop your bones and leave no meat on them. And be sure to check out the Perfect Package 3.0 with all the other essentials, including the lawnmower trimmer, the crop formulation, ball deodorants and toners and things. And if you go to manscaped.com and enter the code JCE, 20% off and free shipping. And that's not just for the brand new cologne. That's for anything on the site, manscaped.com. Use the code JCE for 20% off. Your balls and your body will thank you, including that woodsy masculine finish on your face and neck.
Well, that took a turn, but Jim, let's get
what
next
about
question.
You, Brian? Are you in favor of woodsy masculine finishes?
Not on my face, not behind my ears. I will say no. But they do have a very fine cologne that we could certainly endorse.
It smells wonderful. Stacy was highly impressed.
Whatever gets you away from the Axe body spray is a good thing for society.
Well, you just spray that stuff on like crazy, and it just, it just whiffs away after just minutes. Can't smell it anymore.
Well, let's see if we can get the whiff of this question.
See if we can smell this up any further.
This next one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Roberto Rivera. My question for you, Jim, is what is the single worst thing Vince McMahon has ever done to professional wrestling that has been a detriment to the business?
Oh, come on. Just off the top of I'm going to do the Sports Illustrated guy. Just off the top of my head, I am going to quantify all the things that Vince has ever done and instantly come up with a number one.
I think it's not as bad as you think in terms of what is the single worst thing that's been a detriment to the entire wrestling business.
Humoring shit stain, going toward garbage wrestling in the 90s instead of focusing on the stars they had that was the real backbone of the Attitude Era. That wasn't just one stupid gimmick or one stupid finish, but stuff that had long-lasting effects. Allowing the proliferation of all the tables and ladders and chairs and thumbtacks and stupid furniture matches until that you used to have to sell him on breaking a table, and it was only to be done on a big angle or on a pay-per-view, and now they've got them stacked up under the ring like playing cards. So, I mean, I don't know how to answer something like that.
I'm going to go with putting the different promotions around the country, the territories, out of business.
Well,
because
that would be a good one.
In terms of a long-term detriment, recently, and I was surprised to hear this on a 1990 episode of John Arezzi's show that we cover on Pro Wrestling Spotlight Then and Now, John was talking about some of the problems with WWE losing some talent and not having talent come in, and the NWA's talent issues. And in 1990, this is just 5 years after the expansion, he's saying, well, Vince put all these companies out of business. There's nowhere to get top flight talent anymore. So I think that may be the single biggest detriment, was just making it so you need your NXT You need everyone to be trained the same way by the same people to work in the same system, as opposed to guys developing their craft, working many different places before they get onto a national stage.
Good thinning, Brian. And also, but here's another thing. The training doesn't have to be so cookie cutter, because we didn't do that in OVW. Everybody, you were taught to work safely and the best ways to bump or to execute particular moves so that you wouldn't hurt yourself or whoever you were giving them to. I mean, that's kind of standard. There's some leeway in there, but it's a lot of standardized business. But we didn't specifically make everybody talk the same and act the same and dress the same and cut their hair the same. When they used to cut the guy's hair, I'd have guys that looked like rock and roll stars. Seth Skyfire, Nova, Doug Basham. And they'd come back bald or with some fucking haircut that looked like they worked at a bank. So just because a lot of guys are being trained in the same place doesn't mean that they need to come out of that place looking the same, acting the same, and talking the same. I don't know what they're doing to them now, but it's not necessarily, it doesn't follow that the same training location turns out guys that all work the same. It's being done now on purpose, I guess. But your point was right. Probably the original sin was the reason why the wrestling business worked that way for so long was fairly obvious when you look back at what they did to it afterwards, because that's the way it operated the best, the most profitably for everybody, the most advantageously for the wrestlers and the promoters. Regional territories, there's always fresh talent. There's never a lack of fucking stars, and everybody prospers.
1985, Vince is still able to pull talent from Memphis, from Mid-South, from Crockett, from Florida, from Vern. 1990, where's he pulling talent from? You know, that was
nowhere.
The problem. That was the problem.
and then, for a while, there was a moratorium on bringing anybody from WCW because he didn't want anybody to go there in the first place. So therefore, they figured if we don't hire people from there, then nobody will want to go there because they're doing such shitty business. That was the first half of the decade. But then
he didn't realize how much guys like guaranteed contracts.
Well, but in all honesty, he had the last laugh anyway on a lot of them. But toward the end of the decade, they just ended up cannibalizing themselves, which along with all the other hot shotting, was interesting for a couple of years until it wasn't anymore, because then even that lost its impact. So, and then they had to open their own training facility. Well, they didn't have to. They needed a place, a training facility they could get talent from, which was the whole idea of OVW. Then they had to open their own because they couldn't leave anybody else alone when they were training talent.
All right. So let's move on. Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Kevin Richards in South Wales. Do you remember the first time you saw Ric Flair? And if so, what was your first impression?
Well, the first time I saw Flair on television was on the Georgia Championship Wrestling. It was the TBS Saturday night show. And obviously there was no home video at the time, but we'd already read about Flair in the magazines, seen pictures and etc. As I regret, Weasel Dooley, as a matter of fact, had seen Flair in person before I did because he went to St. Louis. And I mean, it was just he was the total package. He was great looking. He had the charisma and the promo, and he would figure for some of the job guys on Atlanta TV. And then Crockett opened up Cincinnati. And the last year before I got in the business myself, we would go up, and every chance we got when they were running Cincinnati Gardens, I got to see Flair and Snuka and Piper and a lot of those fucking guys live. And he was fucking brilliant. Even on cards with Crockett's level of talent, Flair stood out. He got more reaction. You were anticipating, excited to see him. The match was fucking great. He had the charisma. So then the first time I saw him, actually, right before, the first time I saw him wrestle up close was at the Memphis TV studio when he did the angle with Lawler in '82.
Right before you became a manager.
And then the next week I became a manager. So the next time I saw him was in Mid-South in '84 when we were in the locker room with each other. So that was cool. But he made a first impression because you could just tell that this was a guy that was a step above most of the guys in the business at that time. We're talking 79, 80, 81, that era before he had been on national TV a bunch, before there was home video so everybody could see him, but everywhere he went, he got over. And that's why they sent him to St. Louis to get over, because they knew he was going to be a future NWA champion. And even though Crockett wanted to keep him in his home territory because he'd been drawing money there since fucking 75, he sent him to Atlanta to get on the TBS TV, sent him to Florida to make shots and some of the other NWA strongholds because they knew that they were preparing him for big future runs. So, but yeah, it wasn't hard to figure out what all the fuss was about when you saw Flair in those days.
When did you first get the TBS show? When did you first get TBS?
Well, I didn't get it until I moved to fucking Nashville after I'd already gotten the business, but Weasel Dooley got it in New Albany in 1980, I guess. Because that's the TBS show when the Freebirds,
1980.
We got to see, because that was the attraction. The Flair wasn't on TBS every week in those days, but the Freebirds were. And that was the attraction to go see the Saturday night show, was to see the Freebirds, because they were the fucking talk of the smart wrestling fans around the world.
You mentioned that Weasel Dooley would go to St. Louis. That's, I'm going to guess, maybe 4 hours or so from Louisville. Did you ever do a trip to St. Louis?
I never did, because...
Oh, man.
Well, but here's the thing. You're a teenager and you're young and stupid. I didn't realize at the time that things would go away. I thought, well, I'll always be able to do that, because Weasel and his mom would go over, and I believe they'd spend the night, because it was like 4.5 hours, although since he was in Indiana already, he was headed in that direction. But at the time, I was doing Louisville on Tuesdays, Evansville on Wednesdays, a spot show on Thursdays, going to Memphis on and off when, Terry Funk was there. There was a big show doing the photo business. I had to be here a couple of days a week. That's back in the days when you had to search through and find a fucking negative and take it down to get it developed and go back 2 days later and pick up the prints. And Roger Deem was a St. Louis photographer, and Linda Rufa was over there.
He just passed away. Did you see that?
I saw that. Yes,
I had been in touch with him. We were going to do something for 605, but he was in and out of the hospital for months. And I feel bad that we didn't get to do it. But Roger Deem, he had the WFIA, I think, Bulletin of the Year at one point.
Yes. And we had Texas death matches over a lot of the photography awards. Ones he didn't win, I did, vice versa. But anyway, so I wasn't going to get to shoot at ringside because I didn't have an inn over there, and they had photographers. I wasn't going to get paid to go. To be honest, the St. Louis main events at that time period were attractive, but the underneath cards were the Kansas City guys, and I'm thinking, I can go to Memphis and see a better up and down the card show and be in and take pictures I can get paid for, and et cetera, et cetera. So I never took the time. I didn't imagine that I didn't know Sam Muchnick was going to retire until they announced he did. I didn't know that the business would go to hell in St. Louis shortly after. And I didn't know that I was actually going to get in the business and not have any time to go watch wrestling as a fan. So that's why I didn't go to St. Louis. And Cincinnati was closer, and you could see Crockett. Well, you could see Crockett. You could see Crockett's guys.
In terms of Flair, you would get on the booking committee with him in the fall of '89. When did your relationship really develop? I mean, you worked with him in Crockett Promotions, but when did you start having conversations with him to the point where it had to be more than just your handwriting? Where he said, I got to get this guy to work with me and Kevin. Where did the relationship develop to where it got to that point?
Well, Flair liked us when he came to Louisiana because he was an unofficial talent scout actually maybe official for Crockett. He always wanted the best talent in the business to come to the Carolinas because that was the Cadillac of the NWA territories. If you were on top there, you could make more money. Business was strong for years and years. In '84, they were at a down period. Dusty had just taken the book and he was re-racking everything, but they had hit a little bit of a malaise, and he was always looking for guys. And when he saw the business Watts was doing that year, because he didn't come in the first time till August, I think it was, and then he would make Oak City and Tulsa, even if he wasn't in the rest of the territory sometimes, because of the world-class relationship also. Anyway, he saw the business we were doing. He not only saw us, he saw the Rock and Roll Express. That's Buddy Landell, all those guys. And he started talking to us then about, hey, when you're done here, give Crockett a call. Dusty's booking, blah, blah, blah. And then Dusty came in and actually worked with me in the Midnight and saw us. So that was just to get us there. But then to answer your question as to why he just decided, well, hey, I want him. He had seen, we were in the locker rooms for 3 years at that period together. He knew some of the stuff I was doing with the Midnight, whether it was at Atlanta TV. I'd go get the job guys and I'd sit down with them. And I tried to make it a point of watching most of those guys, even on their matches also. So I knew what we couldn't do to them, because those guys weren't, great workers, but we didn't want to hurt them. And also we didn't want to look like shit. So Rick would watch me giving the fucking finishes for the job matches, or he would watch me before we went out, if it was an angle or something that we needed to go over, me in the Midnight, I was kind of the fucking pitch guy and pitching it back to him. The Fantastics program, he knew that was mine with Dusty, not only pitching him the idea of what, we had nobody to work with. We just renegotiated our contract with Crockett for more money we're in the process of renegotiating in early 88. We didn't have a team to work with. I went to Dusty and pitched Bobby Fulton and Tommy Rogers. I said, they're the best babyface team in the ring in the business, except for the Rock and Roll. And we've already been through the Rock and Roll and they're gone now. I think that's one of the periods they were on the outs with the company. I said, we can do a tremendous program with these guys. It ain't going to be the main event, but we'll tear the house down. Can we bring them in? They're in Dallas now, but I've been talking to them. They're ready to make a move. Okay, let's do it. And then the first 2 or 3 months, that was my program. But Dusty let me pitch, and then he polished it, and then let me do it. We put them over in a non-title match, their first appearance, to get people's attention and give them credibility. Then we did the angle with the DQ and the belt whipping on the first Clash of Champions to lead to the big, hour-long match that we did on Worldwide Wrestling, the syndicated TV from Chattanooga, where we put the fucking U.S. tag belts on them and then had the program and all the house shows. They were great matches. Wasn't the main event. Didn't draw a huge amount of money, but nothing else it was at that point in time anyway. But got the Feud of the Year awards and all that stuff because we had great matches. And Rick had seen me going over stuff with the guys and pitching that. And it also the original Midnight thing, the angle. He had seen me be involved when I was doing TV announcing. We would be in the production meetings, and I had interviewed him and the Horsemen many times, and we just talked a bunch. So it wasn't like just out of nowhere he thought, well, I'll just put Cornette on the booking committee. He knew I had been doing some of this stuff in an unofficial capacity as related to what I was involved in. And he could count on me not to do anything fucking screwy or fuck shit up, I guess. It's about the only thing I can say. And I had some good ideas, and I understood how to give finishes. It didn't used to be that hard. Now, because I had seen a million people who knew what they were doing do this, and a bunch of people who didn't really know what they were doing do it, and I could figure out the difference between the two of those. Now, even if somebody has good ideas or whatever, they have probably worked around 2 or 3 people, if they are lucky, that have any fucking clue of what the wrestling business is all about. So there's nobody's formed them.
Well, you used to have people that could say no, and here's why. And now everyone says yes.
Yes.
Yes, let's do it. Let's get it on TV. All right. Our next question, Jim, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com, is from Michael Scriven in Springfield, Missouri.
You dirty Scriven.
Heard you do a list on the most boring wrestlers. How about this list of the worst tag teams?
Oh, another list.
and he sent a list that was recently posted of the top 7 worst tag teams on 411 Mania.
Okay, now is this of all time?
Let me just see. We spent a good portion of 2020 honoring the great tag teams of the past. It was one of the few things I enjoyed. However, we didn't, what is this saying? I guess of all time, according to this list, I think.
So where are the ding dongs?
Well, number 7, the Dicks. Now they work for you in.
How could we forget?
They were great, actually, in OVW. The Tolans.
No, the Dicks didn't work for me. The guys who were turned into the Dicks in the WWF worked for me, and they were very good, especially Tank Toland. He was brilliant. His gimmick brother, Chad, who looked so much like him, we just said, fuck him, he's your brother. He wasn't nearly as good a worker or as smart to the business as Tank was, but he got tremendous heat because of that sappy smile and the fact that he was kind of doofusy. But the Dicks were a horrible team.
Wasn't a story when they were on the main roster with that horrible gimmick? They got into a fight in the locker room between the two of them.
I think they did. I think Tank finally punched him.
Number 6 on the list of the 7 worst tag teams of all time.
Chad Dick was the Dick, the other brother. What was Tank's name as a Dick?
I'm trying to
I remember Chad Dick.
It doesn't have it here.
Okay, all right.
Number 6 on the list, Techno Team 2000.
Ooh, yeah, that was
Troy and Travis.
That was pretty bad also. That was Eric Watson, who?
Chad Fortune.
That's right. Whatever became of him?
I don't know. I don't know where he came from, and I don't know where he went.
Well, nobody's looking for him, so let's leave it that way.
Troy and Travis, Techno Team 2000. That was pretty bad. Number 5, the Spirit Squad.
Oh, well, that doesn't really qualify as a tag team because there was 5 of them. I've called that in the past the St. Valentine's Day massacre of bad gimmicks. Instead of just killing one guy's career with a bad gimmick, they killed 5 guys. One of them had to change his fucking name entirely. Dolph Ziggler overcame it and continued on in the business. But poor Mondo and Johnny Jeter, who could have been a big star.
Ken Doane could have been a big star.
Ken Doane had some attitude issues when he was young because he was young. He was here when he was 18. He was like 6'4" and whatever. But he also was very talented, could have been a big, but they just fucking, Nick Mitchell was the 5th one, and he had a bad back anyway, and was injured a lot and probably wasn't going to make it to begin with. But yeah, the Jeter and Mondo and Doane never recovered. And that was a crime because they were the best. Jeter and Mondo were both better than Nemeth, Dolph.
Number 4 on the list, the 7 worst tag teams, the Harris Brothers.
What?
Ron and Don Harris, also known as the Bruise Brothers, Jacob and Eli Blue, Skull and 8-Ball of the Disciples of Apocalypse. I don't remember this. Patrick and Gerald of Creative Control.
Oh, that has to be a shit-stained thing from TNA.
And Jared and Jacob Grimm.
The Harris boys are nowhere near a list of the worst tag teams ever that we haven't got to the ding-dongs on yet. I don't see where they've got that from. Well, but they may have seen, because DOA was what it was. It was all those interchangeable groups at that point. And I will admit the Grimm twins and the Blues didn't set anything on fire, but Ron and Don Harris were, watch them against the Heavenly Bodies or the fucking Moondogs. Ron and Don kicked some fucking people's ass. They were guys I would enjoy having on my side in a fucking fight.
You knew how to use them. That's
well, it's not that fucking complicated, but I guess you're right because nobody else ever figured it out.
Number 3, the top 7 worst tag teams of all time, the New Midnight Express.
I can't criticize the performers, but yeah, that was completely rotten. Bob Holly and Bart Gunn. Individually and as performers, neither one of them should be anywhere near a worst anything list in wrestling, especially given the last 15 or 20 years. But yeah, that was rotten. I knew it was rotten to begin with, but I, wanted those guys to have a chance at something because they were not being used at all, obviously.
Number 2, the Ding Dongs.
Well, there you go. The only thing is, I'm just wondering who the fuck beat him. And I said Herd did not. See, this is a misconception. A lot of people think that Jim Herd went to the TV tapings. He couldn't be bothered with going to the TV tapings of a fucking company that he was running unless it was Center Stage, because that was across the street from fucking, or down the block from CNN Center or whatever. But he would have these fucking bullshit ideas that we would be forced to implement, and he wouldn't even be there on the on the road tapings. And as a matter of fact, he didn't even come to most of the Central Stage tapings. If he was at TV, chances are it was at Central Stage or Center Stage.
Center Stage.
I'm trying. I'm desperately trying. It was at Center Stage if he was at a TV, but he didn't even come to all of those. But I wished he'd have been at that fucking TV to see the Ding Dongs debut. The first time they took a bump, those cheap little bells started popping off of their fucking full body suits, their fluorescent orange, as I remember, bodysuits, and rolling all over the ring, and the fucking guys getting in trying to take bumps for them or stepping on these little round balls and fucking falling all over everywhere. And I heard that fucking old antiquated piece of possum shit Jim Herd from his own fucking thin little chicken lips excitedly describing how that, and there's going to be a ship's bell in the corner, and when one of the Ding Dongs is in trouble, the other one's going to ring the bell, and that's going to signal the people to cheer like it was the old fucking bullhorn from the Kentuckians in days gone by. And they started ringing that bell, and the people were like, fuck you. They were either laughing or going to the concession stand or just get the fuck out of this ring. That's what the fans thought. It was fucking horrible. Horrible. And all the boys in the locker room were laughing. And not that we didn't like the two guys. What, Richard Sartain? I started to say Gaylord Sartain. He was an old hee-haw fucking talent. Richard Sartain and the other one, Greg something. God damn, I can't remember their name. We liked those guys.
Greg Evans?
There you go. Evans and Sartain. Sounded like a goddamn country duo. Those guys were nice guys, and it wasn't their fault, but it's just this fucking idiot who still to this day has never taken any responsibility for the way that he destroyed one of the two biggest wrestling companies in the world and led to Vince McMahon owning wrestling. And all he could do was put the Ding Dongs in the fucking ring. Piece of shit. And there's an example for you. Nice guys die young and pieces of shit linger on forever.
Well, that leaves us with number 1 on this list. I'm going to let you make a guess here. I will give you a little bit of a spoiler. It is a tag team from TNA.
Oh, good Lord. I didn't watch it except when I was there, but there was didn't they do some fucking goofy, the Johnsons, another set of dicks? Was that them? That's it.
You got it. Congratulations. I didn't watch this either. I'm looking at a visual here on the screen that looks ridiculous with their manager, Mortimer Plumtree, the Johnsons.
Yeah. Two guys dressed up in flesh-colored outfits to look like big dicks, right?
Mike and Todd Shane.
Yeah, it was the Shane twins. It was the fucking, the ones that I fired from wrestling school.
What? What's that story?
I've told you this. The WWF in 2004 or 5 had signed these Shane twins, they're identical twins, jacked up kind of bodybuilding guys from Florida, and sent them to OVW. And they said they'd been in the business for like 10 years or some long period of time. I guess one of those things where they had one match per year or whatever, right? So they've only been there a couple of weeks in OVW, and they've worked out of some of the classes and everything. So I'm going to put them in a dark match at the TV taping so that I could see what the fuck. And it's what I always did before I put anybody on television. I put them either in dark matches, either at the taping or over at the flea market or a small show, whatever. So it's a tag match, and I can't remember who the baby faces are, but the Shane twins are the heels. And the finish is going to be, I gave simple finishes because I figure if they can pull this off seamlessly, then we can build on something. If they can't do this, then all hope is lost. That's like I gave Linda Miles the finish in her last match in OVW. I said 4 minutes, small package. She couldn't do that. So with the Shane twins, okay, one twin will hold the babyface. The other twin will run for the clothesline, right? But the babyface will duck, and the one twin will clothesline the other twin, who, of course, will take a bump. Then the babyface's partner blows over and nails the fucking guy that just threw the clothesline through the ropes, and the guy that took the bump gets covered. 1, 2, 3. Simple, right? How can a tag team finish be any easier? It can't. I'm watching that match from the announce desk. We're about to fucking start the taping. Guess what the finish was, Brian?
What's that?
One of the Shane twins holds the babyface. The other Shane twin winds up for the clothesline and runs. As he throws the clothesline, the babyface ducks it, and so does the Shane twin. The fucking guy throwing the clothesline went over the top of both of them. Then the Shane twin that ducked realized, he stood up and looked left and right and realized that his brother had run past him and that he'd made a mistake. And then he took a bump. And the OVW fans in the Davis Arena scoff laughed. And the one thing that we never got was scoff laughing. They could laugh at the entertaining wrestling. They could cheer. They could boo. They could do whatever, but they never scoff laughed. My fucking head exploded. I came back in the back. I said, what the fuck was that all about? You know what their explanation was? Why that was all fucked up?
No.
They accidentally got in the wrong place. The twin that was holding was supposed to be the one that was clotheslining and vice versa. I said, you're fucking identical twins. I couldn't tell you apart. You couldn't figure out how to ad lib on the fly. That's when I said, how long you been in the business? They said, oh, about 10 years. I said, then you need to find another line of work. I said, you just exposed the business out there in my fucking building in front of my TV crowd. Do not expect to ever wrestle in this facility again. And I walked off and left them. And I called the office the next day and talked to Johnny Ace. I said, I don't care what you do with them, but they can't stay here. He said, well, what? I told him, well, it's just a mistake. I said, no. If they've been in the business 10 minutes, much less 10 years, they're identical twins, and they can't figure out which one's supposed to duck and which one's not, fuck them. I'm not putting them in front of my people again. They can stay here and train. They will never make television. And I think I was going to say that he took them down to Deep South. He may have done that for a couple of weeks because that was still up, but they went straight to the main roster. Remember, that's when they brought him up to the main roster. I kicked him out of wrestling school because he had signed them because they were from Florida, and Johnny Ace doesn't have a goddamn clue about talent if it bit him on the fucking nose. So he signed them along with the wrong one-legged guy and the other fucking clowns. So instead of hearing that they were so bad that they could not be exposed to the crowd that watches the wrestling school matches anymore, and he'd made a mistake and just send them home, he brought them up to the main roster.
And apparently that was the second worst thing they ever did because they were the Johnsons in TNA.
Yes, and that was after this, that they went and became Johnsons. And because Shitstain was continuing to live out his prepubescent adolescent fantasies about catfighting women and dick jokes. That's all a wrestling promotion was to him, was an opportunity to fucking masturbate like he did in his fucking bedroom when he was a teenager at all the things that he wasn't able to do then, and as we come to find out, as an adult, was never able to do either.
Is there a tag team that wasn't on this list that you think is deserving of being one of the 7 worst tag teams of all time?
Oh, God. But see, that's such a loaded question because can you imagine all of the bad outlaw wrestling, the independent matches over the last 20, 25 years, the crummy matches that took place in the territory days, in the opening match in Kansas City, or still when there were some outlaw promotions? The McGuire twins, just for putting aside the spectacle for performance, have to be one of the worst tag teams of all time, but they drew money if you only saw them once every 2 or 3 years because it was a spectacle. How are we grading, et cetera, et cetera? Do you go specifically on guys that actually made a living in the professional wrestling industry or every outlaw goof that's been on an indie show for the last 20 years? And because that would take the majority of the real rottenness. There's no way. It's like everything else. It's music. It's movies. There have been classics. There have been things that'll stand the test of time. And there's been shit that people just had to say, I don't ever want to see anything that looks like that ever again.
I'll pick one. I'm going to go based on it has to be on national TV. Road Warrior Animal and Heidenreich.
Oh, yeah.
Not young Road Warrior Animal. Road Warrior Animal at the end with Heidenreich.
Yeah. And John got a bad rep too, Heidenreich. What a nice guy. And seriously, what a nice guy. What an intelligent guy. What a fucking beast as far as training and as far as his physical capabilities. He was older when he started training to begin with. He did a great job for us here. And he was never going to be a smooth, polished worker, but because of the sheer look and power of the guy, there was ways to get shit out of him. But then they got up there and weirded him out and, everything else. And I know he liked it. He was having fun because he was a nice guy and liked being in the wrestling business. But the only person I ever liked having an imaginary friend was Killer Carl Cox. It didn't seem to work for anybody else.
Yeah, Rick Steiner tried it too.
Oh, I forgot Rick Steiner. Well, Rick Steiner was an homage to Cox, hence Alex.
Alex, right? Same name.
Yeah, same name. So unless your little imaginary friend is Alex, it doesn't work.
Well, some of these tag teams were truly atrocious, and perhaps they wouldn't have been so bad. This is a horrible transition. They had started their days with vitamins and minerals, all the various vitamins and minerals you can only get from Athletic Greens.
Oh, for fuck's sake, just spread out, kid, and let me take over. Let me ask you this. Do you want to go to the grocery store, folks, in the middle of a worldwide raging pandemic? Do you want to put 40 fruits and vegetables in your cart? Do you want to check out and get germs all over yourself? Do you want to come home, stick all that stuff in a blender, spray your kitchen walls, and then gulp it down to be healthy? Or do you want a person or persons to deliver to your home a mixture containing 40 fruits, vegetables, and botanicals with added vitamins and minerals, prebiotics, probiotics, digestive enzymes, and much, much more that costs less than a cup of coffee a day, especially the way Brian Last drinks it. And it's as easy as adding water, shaking it up in the shaker that they will provide, and gulping it right down with no mess and no cleanup. Your wife likes it too. Suzanne likes it in Last Manor. Stacy loves it in Castle Cornette. The Athletic Greens shaker is always standing by in the refrigerator because Stace gulps it all the time, and she makes me do it too. Because even though I like it, I'm still one of those people. However, the most comprehensive daily nutritional beverage that has ever been produced is produced by Athletic Greens. And as we mentioned, the vitamins, the minerals, the whole food-sourced ingredients, it's all in this superfood blend to increase energy and focus, aid with digestion, support a healthy immune system, and fill the nutritional gaps in your diet. And Brian, if it's one thing that I learned a long time ago, it's that you don't feel really good unless you've had every gap filled numerous times over and over. Athletic Greens has obsessively improved this formula based on the latest research, and they produced 53 different versions of this over the last decade. They keep renewing it and upgrading it. They invest in improving it. That's what I'm trying to say. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in the third-party testing. So, and it's lifestyle friendly, keto free, paleo free, vegan free, dairy free, dairy free and gluten free.
No fleas.
No fleas. Less than 1 gram of sugar. The only thing it is it's not free. However, we can get you some free stuff. Because if you go to athleticgreens.com/JCE, then you will not only be able to get the Athletic Greens, but a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. If you visit that link, the one I just gave you, athleticgreens.com/JCE, free 1 year of vitamin D, 5 free travel packs, as well as this incredible superfood daily nutritional beverage, Athletic Greens. It's green as a pepper tree.
You know, so many people, New Year's resolution. That's what I was about to say, revolution. New Year's resolution is to get into shape, be healthier. The best way to do it, Athletic Greens, start each and every day with all the vitamins and all the minerals, all the nutrients you would need. It's a great way to kick off the new year and start a new regiment. Invest in your health.
Fill in them gaps.
Well,
fill those gaps over and over, as full as they'll go.
Let's fill some more gaps here on this show. This next question was sent in on Twitter using the hashtag CornyDriveThru from Bronco Bronson.
Bronco Bronson.
That's right. A friend of yours?
That is indeed. The only person I've ever known named Bronco was Lubitsch. But he spelled his with a K.
That's right. One of the worst referees of all time.
Oh, come on now.
He was a very good wrestler. He was a horrible referee.
He was.
I saw him count with his foot.
Yes, he would do that. The Mr. Ed, like ask the horse, what's 2 + 2? And they go 1, 2, 3, 4 with it. On spot shows especially, and it wasn't really fair because a lot of times the guys would do this. A hot building or a spot show, the middle of summer or whatever, a long night, because sometimes those world-class shows only had one referee, and they'd do so many false finishes. They'd be getting up and down, and finally Bronco would just lean back against the ropes and count with his foot. But he was a very nice man, and what a financial genius. Saved his money in wrestling, ended up not only Fritz's right-hand man for so long, but was very well off as a result of his time in the wrestling industry.
That's right. Well, here's Bronco Bronson's question. What are Jim's thoughts on Renee Young recently revealing that WWE made her take classes to hide her Canadian accent for her television appearances? Is this a common practice for WWE or other wrestling promotions in general when it comes to their Canadian talent?
Well, honestly, I know that they've been that way about Southern accents, and JR's accent, and Lawler, and etc.
Even WCW was. Didn't they make Missy Hyatt take classes to hide her Southern accent?
Yes, and of a company based in Atlanta, Georgia. Because they thought, well, it's supposed to be nationwide. Well, I always said, and nobody ever said that to me because I was a talent. I can talk any way I want. And then when I was doing the announcing, I was already established, right? But the whole idea of a regional accent being somehow detrimental on television is ridiculous because everybody's from somewhere. And people in Chicago have a distinctive way of talking. People in Virginia have a distinctive way of talking that's a completely different Southern accent from people in Kentucky or Tennessee or Mississippi. Some Virginians sound almost like a Cajun accent from Louisiana, the way they pronounce some things. But then, of course, there's the all-time champion of goofy-sounding accents, and that's New York. And think back to Shitstain. You can still hear him some places, not that anybody wants to. They had him doing commentary, thankfully, only for WWF New York, the show they used to have on WOR, and you couldn't understand a word he was fucking saying. But to them, it was normal because they lived around people who spoke like that, so they didn't hear anything wrong. And so I would say, wait a minute, you think so-and-so has an accent, but this is right? You can understand this? It didn't make any sense. As long as somebody is a good broadcaster and knowledgeable about what they're talking about and the program that we're on or that they're on, it doesn't make any difference what they sound like, as long as you can understand everybody. So, but I didn't even know Renee Young had a Canadian accent. And except for the Aboot thing and them calling Z Zed, I don't know why anybody would be offended. Unless she's not your buddy guy. I'm not your guy pal. I'm not your pal friend.
She was hired. She had experience. She was already on TV. She was already a presenter or whatever she was doing. And they bring her in and say, okay, let's change you.
Yeah. Well, the first WWF TV that I made in 93, Maybe it was the second one. Maybe it was the following day, because the first one I didn't do pre-tapes and stuff because that was my introduction. But then the next day I was starting to do pre-tapes, and I was with Yoko, so I was starting to do local promos. And even back in those days when they were at the smaller buildings for Raw, they would carry their own pre-tape rooms that they would set up. I know everybody's, how do they build their own room? That's, you know what I'm talking about, the soundproof baffling that they would have sections of, that you could construct small cubicles in the back of a big arena, and there was room for several of them, and they would shoot different promos, like in one would be for syndication, and one would be for stuff they needed on Raw, or one would be for local promo inserts in the various local programs. And you would go from one to another, and you'd sit there and do all the promos in that room, and then you go to another one. And anyway, I'm back there, and the first couple of promos I'm doing, they didn't know, the producers, the technical people, because back then they still had technical people that just worked there as a television job. They didn't follow wrestling. See, that was the weird thing to get used to, even in WCW, because they inherited a lot of Crockett's guys, and they'd already been shooting the TBS show. They got a lot of new camera people and things, but there was always, everybody knew who people were in the wrestling business. Most of those people at the start had gotten into television because they were in wrestling instead of the other way around. But I go up there and I figure out the producers and technical people then, they had taken it as a television job. They didn't have any idea of what was going on in wrestling or any other company, right? And that was a departure, because I still at that point wasn't even really used to talking smart around civilians in the locker room or in the back area. And I'm like, fuck, they don't know what the fuck about wrestling, but they're here. So anyway, I cut a couple of promos, and then we took a break for a second while they were changing the lights or whatever. And one of the producers came over and said, you know, you're really good at this. He said, I just want to let you know that if you're thinking about doing this on an ongoing basis, maybe you ought to get your glasses tinted because we're getting some lighting reflection. Like, that was my first day ever doing this. They had just found me somewhere, and I was going to, you got some promise, kid. But if you're going to keep on doing this, you might want to get some tinted glasses.
Oh, I wish we had gotten to see that. You with tinted glasses on TV.
Yeah, and I'm like, well, these are the ones that I kind of see out of, and just work around it. I'll keep moving my head a lot. It won't be too fucking bad. But yeah, he had no idea. He's like, have you done this before? And I thought, because I knew the boys like to rib. Even, I thought, is somebody trying to wind me up? But then I realized that no, he didn't know. I said, you watch a lot of wrestling? He said, well, only this program we work on here. I said, okay. All righty then.
Got a couple of questions we'll read here from several that were sent in about a popular topic. Let me read them both to you, then we'll get you to respond. The first one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Carl in Warwickshire, England, UK. It is rumored that Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest are called up to the main roster, and this past NXT is likely their last. What are your thoughts on these two being called up? Are you scared that they may get buried in the main roster like 99% of the NXT superstars? And the second question here from Charlie in Starkville, Mississippi.
Okay, all right.
What are your thoughts on the reports that Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest are headed to the main roster? And out of the two, who do you think will have the most successful run?
Okay, well, we referenced this on the last experience because we were talking about the programs that they were on where Damian Priest just got beat flatter than 4 o'clock in the middle of the fucking ring by the heel with no out whatsoever, and Rhea Ripley they've botched her. And we mentioned, by the way, thank you everybody who said Cornette just pulled out of his ass a better program between Rhea Ripley and Charlotte involving Ric Flair than what we've seen from them so far, and they get paid to do it. It doesn't make any sense that they beat those guys because, yes, you used to do a job on the way out, leaving the territory and get somebody else over. Or, yes, you used to do a job on TV when you're leaving the company and get somebody else over. They're just changing shows. They're not even changing channels. It's not the same thing anymore. It's like if when Bill Watts had 2 television programs, Mid-South Wrestling and Power Pro Wrestling. Power Pro Wrestling was a secondary program that they came out with because they had more demand in that territory on the local broadcast stations for more wrestling. So they used footage from the arenas and packages and promo segments in the secondary show, but they didn't beat the Junkyard Dog 1, 2, 3 in the middle on one program because he wasn't going to be on that program for the next month. He was just going to be on the other program. So they need to update what they're doing now that their alleged developmental program is on the same national cable network as their flagship show. So I didn't like that because it just doesn't make any sense anymore in the context that they're doing it. Having said that, I like both talents. Damian Priest is probably more bulletproof for the type of booking he's going to run into and the fact that he's somebody that Vince is going to love because he's physically impressive and has a man's voice and is a grown adult. Rhea Ripley has a bigger upside because she stands out so far and away to me above almost every other female in the business that you can see her being sold in a package. There's Roman Reigns, there's Rhea Ripley, there's Brock Lesnar on a poster, and if Brock doesn't come back, then who else would be their big? Drew McIntyre, maybe. He looks great, but you can see those people in a WrestleMania poster. You can see those people in the fucking movies. So Rhea Ripley, to me, has a bigger upside because she's got a market cornered that almost nobody else has. She's a tremendous worker, a tremendous seller, a tremendous talker. She has an incredible look, and she's far and away more impressive than almost every other woman in the business. She doesn't do dives and jumps, and, well, she does some of them, hopefully fewer going forward so she doesn't have an injury issue. But she's not just a little fucking 130-pound girl wrestler doing moonsaults. She's an action movie star, and she's somebody you could really get behind and give a push to. And Hollywood will sniff this out sooner or later. Damian Priest is 15 years older than Rhea Ripley and has got a late start to this party. So Vince would know what to do with him in the old days, but I can't make that blanket statement anymore, and I don't know what the fuck's going to happen.
In terms of who Vince will screw up first, I think Rhea Ripley has a better chance because Vince seems to screw up the male talent a lot more than he does the female talent.
Well, true, because since he takes gives more interest and attention to the male talent, he's got more chance to fuck him up.
I mean, Keith Lee. Just look at Keith Lee.
Yeah.
Look at what they've done to him.
There you go.
All right. Well, our next question.
Boy, that's a fucking flowery forecast, isn't it?
That's the dilemma with WWE. They are the recognized leader in the industry. They will pay you lots of money once you get out of developmental, and you'll be miserable there because they won't use you. It's not even about like, oh, I just wish I was pushed to the top. No, it's about being used in a reasonable manner. But they won't do that. Because their TV sucks and their promotion sucks.
Well,
and
but they got the writers have to fucking earn their money, so they got to write a bunch.
They're not the writers aren't the problem because the problem is the person who supervises the script and endorses the script.
Don't
Vince.
say the word script. That's still sends chills and shivers.
The writers are doing a script to make Vince happy. They're not doing what they think the best wrestling show would be. They're doing what they think Vince wants. And Bruce Pritchard, who's a complete idiot, is the buffer between the two sides.
Now, wait a minute. Now, nobody's perfect.
Nobody. No. But that's the problem. It's these guys doing what they think Vince wants with Bruce Pritchard as the conduit between the two sides. It's a system set for failure. Creatively, and in terms of the way things are used, and in terms of driving off fans and record numbers. So that's I don't blame the writers like you do. I'm against the idea of having writers. But I bet you if the writers were left on their own, they would produce a better show than them writing for Vince.
Well, yeah, that's always been the case. because I know for a fact that Bruce could, in the 90s, could have produced a better show than if he had been left alone than they do now. I know I could have if I'd been left alone. So maybe that's always the thing is whoever's doing it could do better if Vince would leave him alone, but trying to do what Vince wants. But Vince will say, I want a murder mystery, and so did it. Well, how'd he do it? Where'd he do it? Who'd he do it to? Well, you figure that out. Okay, well, we're stuck with the goddamn big finish, but now we got to get there. That's always the way it is working for Vince. And especially since the writers don't know anything about wrestling to begin with and don't give a fuck whether anybody believes it or not or it has any credibility. They could probably do better. It would still suck, but it wouldn't suck as bad as what Vince wants them to do when they're trying to do what he tells them first, but doesn't give them any details.
Well, Jim, a non-wrestling question up next.
Uh-oh.
Sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Dave in New Brunswick, Canada. I know the great Brian Last is a fan. The man has impeccable taste. But Jim, have you seen Cobra Kai? It is, in my opinion, the best booked pro wrestling program out there.
I am completely at a loss for words.
Well, of course, it's not a pro wrestling
Is
program.
It Dakota Kai?
No, Cobra Kai. Cobra Kai.
I've heard the phrase Cobra Kai. Probably on Twitter I've read it. I don't know what the fuck it is.
Did you ever see the original Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio?
Unfortunately, yes.
You didn't like Karate Kid?
It just, I wish Pat Morita would have just kicked the shit out of everybody.
I mean,
I like 70s kung fu movies, but even then I shot the holes in the bad workers. I was like, no, it's not goddamn realistic. He didn't fucking do 4 flips and jump over the goddamn building. I liked Bruce Lee because his fucking work looked a little more fucking credible. But the fucking white kid being a karate fucking master, fuck.
He wasn't a karate master. Do you even know what the plot of the movie is? What was the plot of the movie?
Pat Morita was an old karate master that taught the fucking kid to stand on one foot and do that thing that Chris Champion used to do where he kicked everybody's front teeth out. Quit doing it.
I saw Chris Champion do that to Rick Steiner. Yeah. And it was the stiffest kick I've ever seen. And Steiner hit him with a Steiner line that was a shoot right after it. Watch this. Boom.
That's the thing. Well, because Champion worked in the Memphis territory for a while as Cowabunga, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. This was before Brian Hildebrand got the suit. And they nicknamed him Tonguey the Turtle because he had to leave the territory because he was at the fucking merchandise table in Evansville at the Coliseum, had a little fucking 15-year-old sitting on his lap slipping her the fucking tongue. And but anyway, that the Karate Kid pose, the fucking whooping crane or whatever, and lip up and kick. He was trying. Yeah, he was trying to do that, and he was potatoing everybody. And like I said, Steiner knocked him the fuck out, and then they made him quit doing that.
Well, you can't really work that kick.
No, he thought he could, but he couldn't. There was a couple of things that remember the Midnight Express worked for a little while with the New Breed, and there was a couple of and Sean Royal was a great guy. And Chris was okay too, but he thought he was further along than he was. And there was a few times that the Midnight had to settle him down. That one time Big Bubba had to beat both of them up, which was so demoralizing for him. Have I told that story?
I don't know the story about Big Bubba beating him up, no.
Yeah. We're at a spot show somewhere in fucking like Virginia, outside of the Charlotte area, just a couple hours from Charlotte. And it's a packed high school gym. And the Midnight's going to work with the New Breed, and because the New Breed was middle card, we were going to beat them, even though it was a spot show. There still has to be some credibility here, but we're going to have a good match with them, and the people are going to love it. And that's when Bubba was with us. It was my bodyguard, right? And this was 87 heading up toward the Bunkhouse Stampedes, as I recall, where basically Bubba was Dusty's property, right? Bubba and Dusty were going for the Bunkhouse Stampede final thing or whatever, and Bubba, everybody in the locker room knew, did not sell unless it was the Road Wars Dusty main event, whatever. He wasn't going to fucking interfere in this spot show match. We weren't trying to get a ton of heat, but he's out there because he's with us. So the Midnight comes out first. I can do a big introduction and we get people hot, and then here comes the New Breed. So we get out of the ring so they can have the ring, and Chris Champion comes over and leans over the top rope while Bubba isn't looking, and I looked around just in time to see him, and he flipped Bubba's hat off. And the people fucking blew. There was like 2,000 people in a high school gym, whatever. It was just a little town, but everybody they were packed in there, and it was loud, and everybody's laughing at Bubba. And Bubba sells it facially and but he's not supposed to do anything in this match, so he doesn't know what to do. I said, Bubba. He said, what? I said, get in there, beat him up, and throw him out of the ring. He said, what? I said, get in there and beat him up in a working way and throw him out of the ring. Go now. Okay. So he rolls in the ring and they see him coming. They're like, what the fuck? And they start trying to do the babyface, make a comeback. The two of them, he ain't going to sell it. And he just fucking gave the fucking hammers, the fucking forearms over the fucking overhead forearms. Boom, boom, boom. And I think he tried to chuck Chris Champion out first and he didn't want to go. So Bubba threw him. And then he went. And then Sean Royal worked and went with it, and they got thrown out on the floor. And they're recovering, and they threw a bunch of shots at Bubba. He didn't sell anything, and they would have had to both of them engaged in a full-fledged fucking shoot fight for their life for the two of them to get Bubba down. So they weren't going to do that, so they just fucking huddled up there on the floor. And I got in the ring, and I walked over. I said, okay, now we're going to ring the bell, start the match. Here we go. And then Bobby and Stan fucking did some spots for him and then got some heat on him, gave him a comeback, and then we beat him. And so then they got chewed out afterwards because they should have known Dusty is fucking working a program with Bubba Rogers. You humiliate Bubba Rogers in front of all these people, he's going to have the fucking last word. If you hadn't touched him, he would not have interfered. We would have had a match where we did a bunch more stuff for y'all, and then we would have fucked you and still won, but you would have looked better. But now, one guy got in the ring, because you had to be a smartass, try to get over with the people. One guy got in the ring and beat the fuck out of you. Then you started the match, and then another team beat you 1, 2, 3. So know where to fucking know your role and stay in your fucking lane. And it's the same thing I had to tell fucking Batista that time. When Russ McCullough decided to cut a promo and switch heel in Huntington, West Virginia, because the people booed him because he looked like a big, obnoxious heel coming out. Batista is Leviathan, the demon of the deep, the top heel in OVW. We're doing a bar show in Huntington. They don't see our TV. So Russ McCullough, 7 feet tall, big, hairy, bearded fuck, looked like Kevin Nash if he'd been floating in the river for 3 days. They figure, well, he's the heel. So they boo him coming out. Instead of waiting for the real heel to come out and having the match that was planned so that the people would know who to cheer, Russ McCullough gets on the microphone and decides to fucking be a heel on the microphone and tell people off for booing him. So there's Stacy. This is 20 years ago. There's Stacy standing there with Leviathan, Batista, waiting to go out. And Russ McCullough's still talking, and he's healing the people, and he's doing this and that. I said, when you get in the ring, I want you to hit the ring. I want you to beat him up and pin him in 40 seconds or less. He said, what? I said, I want you to hit the ring. I want you to beat the fuck out of him in a working way. I don't want you to sell anything, and I want you to pin him in 45 seconds. Okay. So Batista rolls in and starts going for fucking Russ McCullough, and Russ starts defending himself by swinging, and Batista don't fucking sell anything. He fucking hammers him a couple of times. He whispers in his ear, letting him know what's going on. He shoots him off. He spears him. He pins him 1, 2, 3. Gets his fucking hand up, sends the people cheer because look at Batista. He looks like $1 million, and now he's obviously the babyface because this other guy's insulted us and looks like a piece of shit's been floating in the river, whereas look at that guy's body. Then they come back, and McCullough's like, what the fuck? I said, well, since you went out there and switched heel, then I had to switch Leviathan babyface. And the best way to get a babyface that looks like that over cold in the middle of a bunch of people that have never seen him before is to give him a decisive fucking win. Or you could have just gone out there and had the match you were supposed to have, put some time in, learn what you were doing because this was supposed to be a training match, but you decided to switch heel on your own fucking volition and cut promos on people instead of just waiting for everybody to settle down and see what was going to go on. So that's why that happened. And then because he was such a big 7-foot pouty baby, he went out and sat in the car and talked to his girlfriend and or the office about how he'd been mistreated instead of helping all the other guys tear the ring down, because it was the night that the heels set it up and the baby faces tore it down. Because obviously they couldn't intermingle because the people would see them together.
See, if he was smart, he would have said, I can't take the ring down. I turned heel.
Yeah, but he wasn't smart. He wasn't smart in any shape of the word. So then all the fucking baby faces were mad at him because he was actually in his car crying on the phone to some man, trying to call the office to get some sympathy. And fucking all the rest of the guys were mad because he wouldn't help because he was pouting. Dutch Mantell saw him in goddamn tears because he was in Puerto Rico. That's where they sent him, try to run him off when they realized they'd bought a pig and a poke. And I think his wife was either pregnant, but it wasn't his or something, and he was just crying in the hotel lobby. And Dutch said, you need to get out of the wrestling business and go back home. But anyway, things like that happen.
Well, back to Cobra Kai.
Oh, what's Cobra Kai?
So in the first movie, Ralph Macchio, Daniel LaRusso, meets Mr. Miyagi, takes him under his wing, teaches him some karate because he's getting his ass kicked by the local kids who live in that town who are part of the Cobra Kai karate dojo.
They should have taught him Karak, Kachain, and Kachair. He would have had fewer lessons and won the fight easier.
Well, he ends up winning the All Valley Karate Tournament with the crane kick. Cobra Kai, the series, picks up all these years later from the point of view, or at least initially, of the blonde bad guy, played by William Zabka, who was Johnny in the movie, Johnny Lawrence. His point of view, which is, this guy ruined my life. This guy moved into town, took my girl, defeated me in the tournament with an illegal kick. It's this whole other story about how his life is unraveled, and to try to get his life back, he decides to open up Cobra Kai. The one time in his life he had some discipline and something to do was when he was a kid doing Cobra Kai. So he opens it back up. Daniel LaRusso, the purported good guy in the first films, is now a big local car dealer, and the karate's in all of his billboards. So this guy's driving to work every day and he sees, the guy who beat him in the tournament, like doing karate against the car. So it's a really, really great show. And they each get students, and it ends up, I don't want to spoil anything, the original bad sensei comes back. It's a phenomenal show, especially if you grew up loving those movies. But that's Cobra Kai.
Actually, it sounds like a better show for people who always thought those movies were horseshit, because I want to hear it from the other fucking guys' viewpoint.
You should check. You may actually like it. Stacy would like it.
What channel is this on?
It's on Netflix.
Oh, I don't know how to work that.
The entire world has that channel.
Oh, fuck it. Is it on my cable? I have Spectrum Television.
Actually, I don't know, because on Fios here in New Jersey, there is a channel dedicated to Netflix where if you have a Netflix account, you could access it through the cable box. So you may have it there. I don't know.
When they put it on NBC, let me know.
When they put Netflix on NBC?
Or something that I can watch without going to a lot of trouble.
Go watch it on your computer. Well, I give up.
Yeah.
We will find a way to get you to see Cobra Kai. Every now and then we talk about something, and people will say, I'm going to send Jim a DVD so he could see this movie or see this show. Does anyone ever send it to you?
Yes. No, as a matter of fact, now I've got 3 copies of A Fistful of Quarters.
Oh, get out of here.
If anybody needs 2 DVDs of A Fistful of Quarters, I've got 3 of them now.
Have you watched it?
I'm going to actually sit down and watch one of them here this week coming. It's the first week of January. I've just taken time off for the first time in like 3 years. You'd think I haven't got to that yet.
Has anyone sent you Monster Squad?
Yes, I got Monster Squad. I get everything we talk about. I'm donating a few things to underprivileged fucking sheep herders or something because I've got too many.
So basically what you're saying is there is a chance we can have for at least 2 weeks a regular recurring segment of you reviewing movies we have talked about sometime in the last 6 months.
There could be coming up at some point, yes.
I'm excited. This is exciting. Although I will say, I feel bad for the disappointed listeners out there who think they're the ones sending you this unique copy of a movie for you to watch, only to find out it's part of a pile of DVDs that you have received.
Well, no,
based on things we have talked about. And I can understand why some of these listeners...
Wait a minute. There's 3 people out there that have sent me that DVD that now you have ruined all 3 of their good feelings that they had.
Did anyone send you Hey Mo, Hey Dad?
I have not got that as of yet.
Okay. Well, my point is, I can understand why some of these disappointed listeners may want to sue.
You think they need compensation?
They need compensation for this theft.
You might be entitled to get even with Cornette for being the third person to send him a copy of Fistful of Quarters. Well, folks, I got news for you.
King of Kong.
King of Kong, A Fistful of Quarters, whatever the subtitle is. The point is, whatever fucking gripe you might have, whatever chaps your ass, whatever grinds your gears, do you have some offensive outlaw sex offender hitting you with slap lawsuits? Do you have an entire city that has been given cancer by a greedy corporation? Look no further. I got the guy that can get even for you.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Those are the rest.
Folks, he's been in the news lately, and people that he is representing have been in the news. Did you hear, Brian, that the city of Minden, West Virginia now has been designated one of those big Superfund sites by the EPA, whereas a few years ago they were like, oh, return to your homes. Nothing more to see here. Everything's fine. Now, because the folks in Minden, West Virginia have proper representation, things are happening. They're going to send a lot more money in there for cleanup. Of course, as you know, we've mentioned it on the program, this big corporation in the process of leaving dangerous chemicals and contaminants in the ground over there near Minden, West Virginia, leached into their water system. The whole town got cancer. Now they're coming in to clean things up, and it's not over yet, but when it is, those people will get justice, and they'll get justice, and they'll get compensated, and they'll have the heads of these evil polluters on a silver platter, courtesy of the law office of Stephen P. New, newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. You may have also heard that egregious example of waste of human flesh that used to fling people around by his tiny little penis that looks like my little finger on a low-carb diet, has been suing everybody in sight for telling people the things that he has done and said in the past. Well, one of those young men, and I can't, his last name, O'Pelly, is it Primo? Is that the way you say it?
I'm not even sure. But he's one of the good guys.
He's one of the good guys, O'Pelly. Worked for Ring of Honor in the past. He's a fine, independent young man up there, and he's getting sued for millions of dollars because he used to associate with and know of this individual and told some people of some of the things that he did. And, of course, the guy's going around trying to sue everybody, trying to get out of this. Well, Stephen P. New is helping young Pelly. First off, he got the suit completely thrown out of the state of California, and the next thing he's going to do is fight it in Philadelphia, and that will probably not be the last that you hear of Mr. New in the wrestling industry as far as a legal representative. Newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen. If you need to sue, call Stephen P. New. He's everywhere. He's like El Kabong.
Well, let's get a couple questions before we wrap things up, play a couple songs. This next one was
Have I ever told you the story that Bobby Fulton was telling me again just a couple of days ago about the Mighty Igor?
I'm not sure. I don't remember a Mighty Igor story.
Because this came up while we were talking on the phone. You know, a lot of times it's been in the books. Owen Hart, Mick Foley, they were very stingy on the road, didn't like to spend money, liked to ride with fans, stay with friends, didn't spend a lot of money. They are amateurs next to the Mighty Igor, who, remember back in the 60s and 70s, the bigger model cars, the full-size cars like the Cadillacs, the Lincolns, they were fucking giant. They were huge. Bobby Eaton in 19 84 had like a 1976 Lincoln. We called it the USS Alabama. You almost had to pay 2 parking meters. And the fucking trunks were huge and wide, so you get 4 big wrestlers and all of their bags and a cooler of beer and all this stuff in these cars. The mighty Igor had a way to save money while he was traveling on the road. He had one of those big cars. It's not like he was driving a, $40,000 brand new Lincoln. You get one of those old Lincolns, you put 150,000 miles a year on them. He put a mattress in his trunk. And after a show, he would drive to the next town. And he would drive to the building, and he'd go around back, or he'd go in a corner. He'd pull in behind the dumpster, wherever a quiet spot was. And he would everybody knew who he was, but they wouldn't see him because he wouldn't be sleeping in his car. He'd be sleeping in his trunk. And he'd set his little alarm clock, and he'd no hotel money whatsoever. He'd go in the building early, he'd shower, he'd eat at the concession stand, and he'd go on and he would sleep in his trunk. That's dedication.
That's amazing. I wonder how Ivan Putski copied that.
I don't think he copied it like that.
Ivan Putski copied Mighty Igor, and then there was Igor Putski.
Oh, that was Ricky Ferrara. Igor Putski was Ricky Ferrara. He was French. I think he was French-Canadian, but he was French. But he owned a gym in Pineville, Louisiana by the time that we got there. But he had been a wrestler in the 70s, and then he switched to refereeing for Watts and Mid-South Wrestling. And he was just on the way out when we got there. He refereed some of our matches, and then he left the business. They brought Carl Fergie in as a referee. Ferrara became the full-time gym owner. But yes, Igor Putski, the Polish Russian, was really a French Canadian.
Was Johnny Martinez still refereeing when you got there?
Johnny Martinez?
He was a Mid-South referee in the later part of 1983.
I remember a young Hispanic kid, but that wasn't his name. Tony Torres.
No, Tony Torres was a wrestler, different guy.
He refereed a little bit too, I believe, at that point. I don't know. Maybe but I don't remember Martinez.
There's a change in referees because Alfred Neely was the longtime referee, and then he's gone.
I never met Alfred Neely. What bumps he took?
Oh, he took amazing bumps. Too often, maybe.
Well, you looked at him crossways, he'd fly across the ring, but it wasn't like wrestling bumps. It was like real, dangerous looking bumps. When a guy would grab him and throw him, he'd fucking go. But he was gone by then. We had Ronnie West came in that year. We had originally Ricky Ferrara was there. Carl Fergie came in very, very soon afterwards. There was Pee Wee Anderson, who was already there because of JYD.
Did you ever have Jerry Usher?
Never. Nope. Jerry Usher. Never worked with Usher either.
He was like the Bronco of Mid-South for a while there.
Yes, he had retired before we got there. And then Ronnie West was so incredible. He came in that summer, and he was just insanely good as a referee.
You just missed, by a few months, the brief run of referee Joel Armstrong.
Was that Joel Watts?
Joel Watts is a referee. Yeah. You just missed it.
Thank goodness. I don't know if my ears could have stood that much screaming. Poor Joel was doing the fucking videos and the TV work. One day Watts said, "Joel, you blithering idiot." We could hear it all the way from the babyface side.
Well, let's get a couple last questions here. This one having to do with Mid-South Wrestling. Sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from John. Evening from the English countryside. Hope this finds you both well. I'm currently watching the Midnight Express in Mid-South. Just a little thing that may mean nothing, but I wonder why Dennis Condrey takes his bandana and ties it around his knee before the match begins. I've listened to all the old episodes, and I don't remember this being asked before.
That was a thing that Dennis just started doing when he started wearing bandanas, which, the early 80s was the time of everybody wearing bandanas. But while he would wear it to the ring around his neck, you wouldn't have a match. That's why you don't have a match wearing any jewelry. I've seen some guys wearing necklaces or their wedding ring on some kind of leather little thong around their neck. I'm like, you're fucking out of your mind. Have you ever seen a hanging? It's the same principle. So he would take it off, and instead of just tossing it with his vest or jacket or whatever, he would put his foot up on the fucking bottom rope and tie it around his knee. That was just a thing he did. There was no plan behind it, and it wasn't. It didn't come into play as a foreign object. It was just a safe place to put the bandana rather than having a match with a noose around your neck.
That's it? No hidden meaning or anything else?
That's pretty much it. Well, think about it. If you're watching MTV in 1983, 84, how many people are wearing bandanas? Every fucking body and everything, right?
Well, the thing
I never wore a bandana because I was never fashionable to begin with, but.
Yeah, but the thing is, you see Ricky and Robert, and it makes sense. It's one of those crazy moments when you look at how old Dennis Condrey is and how old he was there, and it's like, holy shit, he was only, 32 here? It's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's actually, wait a minute. He turned 32 when we were in Louisiana.
He looks 10 years older.
Yes, and see, that was the thing and also because he had been around so long, especially if you'd been a Tennessee wrestling fan, he'd been in main events since 75 when he was 23. So, and then that's why he was so baby-faced, it almost looked ridiculous when he first started. And baby-faced, I'm talking about, no beard, no mustache, kind of long hair of that time. But, he had to grow some facial hair and then gig marks helped. He got a lot of juice in Tennessee. But yeah, he looked older and more gruff and, mean than what he actually was at the time. Well, he was still gruff and mean, but he looked older. And then when, the transformation in his body, because you go back and look at 1975 stuff when he and Hickerson were a top team, but his physique was, let's say, not toned to be, or tanned to be charitable. But then by 82, 83, when he had that real good run in Memphis, him and Norvell, him and Randy, the Midnight Express and Continental, the whole 9 yards, he was working out. He was lifting weights. He was fucking,
not riding around with Phil Hickerson anymore.
Not riding around with Phil Hickerson. Even though he wasn't a bodybuilder, he was in great shape. He weighed 230. He was strong. He could muscle those fucking guys up whether they wanted to go or not. So, he was that period of time through the mid 80s there, he was in good shape. But no, he was only in his mid 30s.
Well, Jim, our final question this week on the Drive-Thru, sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from, oh boy.
From oh boy, I haven't heard from him in ages.
Sifof.
Uh-oh. Here we go.
First, let me apologize in advance. I know this is his real name. Sifofestu.
What?
No. I'm trying to do this. Sifofestu Sturman in Johannesburg, South Africa.
How do you spell that first name?
Siphosethu.
Well, okay.
Well, try it.
Sifafastu.
I think that's probably what it is.
As Mama Cornette used to say, you do and you'll clean it up. Go ahead.
Good day, Jim, and your co-host who never reads our questions.
Well, egg on your face there now, Sifafastu.
You can call me Gift from Johannesburg, South Africa. Oh, God, I'm trying to do this.
I prefer to just call you long distance, but anyway, nevertheless.
My question, between the two men, Sting and The Undertaker, who was more successful? Who has had the bigger impact and stronger legacy? My pick is Undertaker, because to me, he is the greatest of all time. His gimmick, his longevity, the WrestleMania streak, and his in-ring work, it's everything to me. I can tell you, Taker is even big here in South Africa. Sting, not so much.
What? Sting, not so much. Now, everybody is going to say, oh, look, Cornette's knocking Sting again. I'm saying, yeah, they've both been big stars, but The Undertaker's on a different level, not just above. Sting never had the opportunity to be at Undertaker's level because he made excellent money, but he maybe not as much as Taker would have made because I don't see how, just that 3 years of Bischoff spending money like a drunken sailor in WCW. But Sting never got the chance. He only worked for Crockett for a little over a year, and then they sold to TBS. And from 88, really, 89 was still a decent year, and 90 was okay. But from 90 to 96, WCW was a non-entity, drew no major money, no major crowds. It was a television product and a mismanaged company. While Undertaker was starting the streak at WrestleMania and becoming one of the biggest names in the history of the biggest wrestling promotion in the history of the world. And Taker stayed there. Sting was out of the business for a while and then went to TNA. And once again, they paid him well for the work he did, but he never had the opportunity to draw major crowds with TNA. He didn't have the opportunity to do major pay-per-view buy rates. So in any quantification, The Undertaker is a bigger star. Any quantification besides in-ring talent and performance is subject to your interpretation. Mileage may vary, but there's no way to objectively quantify Sting in any business metric. Big crowds, major matches of longevity, huge buy rates. There's no way that anybody can compare. A lot of the guys that worked for a long period of time in the WWF can't compete with Undertaker. So there's no comparison there. Maybe that's not what he's looking for, but that's it.
So you're saying Sting, not so much.
Well, I mean, it's not even in this instance, it's not Sting's fault. He was never with a company that could present him on a worldwide platform, give him the big name opponents and the fucking chance to draw major crowds. The only time WCW drew crowds in any comparison to the WWF during Sting's run there from 1987 to 2001 was a 3-year period from 96 to 99, right? Or 97 to 2000, whatever it was. Undertaker continued for the last 20 years. He's been in front of bigger crowds and bigger stadiums, bigger pay-per-view rates, bigger fucking $1 million gates, etc. More people around the world have seen him. It's just, it's not a fair comparison.
Oh no, the drive-thru is closed. That's better. You can hear us this Friday on the Jim Cornette Experience.
Play us out, Johnny.
Wherever you find your favorite podcast, we'll be back next Monday on the Drive-Thru. Don't forget, access classic episodes, the archive of the Drive-Thru and the Experience by becoming a patron. Patreon.com/Cornette. For only $5 a month, you get access to every episode from the beginning in 2013 up to right now, early 2016, with new episodes added each and every Sunday night. Patreon.com/Cornette. The official Jim Cornette YouTube channel for full episodes, clips of episodes, and omnibus collections, all with the exclusive and amazing Travis Heckel artwork. tinyurl.com/official Jim Cornette, or just go to YouTube and search for Jim Cornette. It'll come right up.
You won't have to look hard.
You can follow Jim on Twitter at the Jim Cornette. You can follow me on Twitter at Great Brian Last. You can hear me on the 605 Superpodcast at 605pod.com. Available wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com.
No, we're closed.
We'll see you in February.
Sometime. We're trying to get some information now so we can plan that concerning the surgery and etc. So we can plan reopening the store. Thank you for your support in 2020. And I'm taking a little break.
Bookmark that site now. jimcornette.com.
You can't put a bookmark on a computer screen.
Oh, boy. The Drive-Thru has been brought to you by the Law Office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. As many in the wrestling business are finding out, he is a friend to the good guys. newlawoffice.com. But until Friday on The Experience, and next week, right back here on the Drive-Thru, for Jim Cornette, I'm the Great Brian Last. Tally-ho!
How would you bookmark a computer screen? You can't fold the screen up around the bookmark.